Thank you very much, Melvin. Just a few things about my dedicated volunteer when it comes to following the students. I've seen fight to make sure the chairman of the Institute of Certified Secretaries. I have made one or two comments in terms of his experience and what he has done across different sectors when it comes to governance matters. You will hear much more from him in that regard, but I want to cite the counties because for a very long time he was part of the executive in Makueni County during that time of Professor Kibwana. And you all know what happened during that tenure of Professor Kivutha Kibwana, what Makueni County was looking at like when it came to performance. And I would like to believe it is because the Institute had lent one of its most powerful, let me use the analogy of soccer, one of its most powerful players to support and drive governance and strategy at the county level. And that shows you, for all of us who are asking the question, whether it actually matters, whether governance translates to performance. Nothing could present powerful evidence like the role that our chair played in the Makueni County and what that county was able to achieve in a very short period of time. Bwana Chairman, we are very honored to have you grace this event, taking your time from a very busy schedule. I know there are so many other meetings that are calling and making demands on you. And I also know that the words that you will leave with these young budding professionals will have impact not just for today, but many years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, can we put our hands together and welcome the chairman of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, FCS Joshua Wambua. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wayne Mutuma, for those very kind remarks. Let me appreciate the Dean, the Faculty of Law, who is ably represented here by Dr. Njaramba. Thank you very much for gracing this occasion and also for allowing us to have this meeting here, which is for the purpose of meeting and interacting with the students and equally with the public, because this event is in the public domain. Let me also appreciate Professor Githu Muigai, who has sent a representative. Karibu sana, and we really appreciate. I think at this point I must say that Professor Githu Muigai is a member of this institute, is a fellow of the institute, a very supportive person. And so we really appreciate him through you. Equally appreciate FCS Professor Dr. Nicholas Letting, the CEO of CASNEP, a very key institution when it comes to this profession because it's the examining body. And so he'll be talking to us and also will be sharing his views on a number of issues regarding the question of the certified secretaries in this country. Dr. Wayne, who is the coordinator, the main coordinator of this event. We appreciate you. FCS Karanja, who is our CEO, thank you very much for being here. CS Joyce Koech, the registrar of companies, who has already been introduced. Thank you very much for coming. The BRS, the Business Registration Bureau, is very important when it comes to this profession. Let's remember that's the memory of the country as far as business records are concerned. We have got my fellow council members who are here, FCS Salome, and then we have got CS Kema, who is already seated here, and I don't think you were introduced. Can you be upstanding and wave? Yes, thank you very much. All the members of the Young Association, which has already been introduced here, and the students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Yes, I know we are supposed to have started at, was it 9 o'clock? Yes, and it has taken us a while before we mobilized ourselves and arrived. Of course, this reminds me about what happened the other day. Is it yesterday or the day before yesterday? In the performance contracting signing ceremony, which was headed by none other than the head of state. And I think that that statement from the head of state defines a new chapter in this country in terms of keeping time. But I don't want to go that way because it's a sensitive matter. We leave it we leave it to lie. The owners will drive it to where it belongs. Just like you've been told, I serve as the chairman of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, and this event is for the purpose of interacting with you students so that you may be able to understand this profession, because there are many people who don't understand, who even don't know that it exists to begin with. And number two, those who know that it exists, they probably don't understand it well. And so by the time we leave this place, if we'll have done three things, we will have informed those who don't know about the profession that the profession exists. That is a tick. Number two, we'll have clarified to those who know about the profession but don't know it well. Tick number two. And tick number three, we'll have networked. And I think we'll have accomplished our mission if that is done. And I am sure it's going to be done. The ladies and gentlemen who are in this room will be able to deliver on that particular aspect. My first assignment, I think, is to introduce the Institute. The Institute of Certified Secretaries of Kenya is a professional membership association which is established through an Act of Parliament, Chapter 534 of the Laws of Kenya, and it was established in 1988. The Institute was operationalized in 1989. The purpose of the Institute, or the objects of the Institute, is to promote growth, development, and the regulation of the governance and the corporate secretarial profession in Kenya. Our identity is corporate governance. Our assignment is to promote and grow corporate governance practices in this country, or improve on corporate governance, because it's a question of improving it. Being a member association, we are also involved in governing and regulating the affairs of our members to ensure that they adhere to the set principles in the practice of corporate governance profession. So we regulate our members, ladies and gentlemen. I think that is a key attribute that you need to appreciate. Just like there is the Law Society of Kenya, just like there is the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, and many other professional associations, We are known as the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya. And so our association regulates the practitioners in that particular area. I think I should mention that as an association, we are members of the Association of Professional Societies in East Africa, which is the umbrella body, the national umbrella body in this country, which brings together all the professional associations in this country. And of course, APSEA, we are very lucky today because one of our council members, who is the CEO of CASNEB, and again, you may show your hand, Dr. Leting, Professor Leting, is the chairman of APSEA. And so we have got a commonality in terms of growing professionalism in our country. Our mission, rather our vision, is to be the leaders in good governance for a sustainable society. The question of sustainability is a big issue, and that's what we are pursuing on the subject of good governance. And our mission is to develop and guide sustainability and governance standards in organizations. We formulate standards on given areas of operation, on given areas of professional performance, so that those standards will guide us into standardizing on how things are going to be done. Just for simplicity, one of them would be, for instance, the question of holding successful meetings. You may take it for granted, but there are professional standards which are already established on how to hold a successful board meeting. What are the prerequisites? There is a governance standard which is already established and formulated on that particular area. But that's just one of the examples that I wanted to draw from. Our mandate is to promote practice of good governance in both the private and the public sector. We have issued codes of conduct on governance aspects for every sector, for the private sector and for the state corporations. For the state corporations, we rely on the Mwongozo, and I think Mwongozo is really a public document. You can always find it and relate with it, and you see the contribution that we have made as an institute. We work with the Capital Markets Authority, particularly to formulate and enforce standards for those companies or corporations which are quoted in our securities exchange and which are regulated by the Capital Markets Authority, and many more other codes which I may not be able to list right away. Now, we have a students' association body which is the link between the institute and the students. Because like I think like Dr. Wayne was saying, this is like a relay. The students supply the people who are going to qualify and become professionals. And then once they become professionals, they become the practitioners, they become the mentors, and therefore the cycle continues as would be. So that today you could be a mentee, but tomorrow you'll be a mentor. So we rely on those students as a source of our potential members for the future. We integrate with students on a number of activities which include webinars, conferences and dinners, and all these create an opportunity for students to network and interact with the practitioners. For example, in the month of August, we are holding our annual conference in Mombasa, which is one of our premier events, during which we discuss matters, national interest in terms of practice, in terms of governance. And we usually make sure that we support students to come and learn and also to share with us what they expect as young Kenyans. Therefore, we are inviting each and every one of you to embark on this remarkable journey with us, interacting with the Institute, so that we can be able to increase our student registration with CASNEP, take the exams, pass the exams, and be certified as to have passed the exams, and then you can be invited to become a member of the Institute. And once you become a member of the Institute, then you make your contribution at national level. Just like you'll notice, and this will come out from the speakers who will come after me, everyone here is making a contribution. Dr. Wayne mentioned that I served in Makueni county government as a waziri. You know, we were very happy when we were being called waziris. We didn't want to be called ECMs because an ECM is not understood by Mwikali and Mutua on the ground. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that it was easy for us to be defined and put into perspective. I served in that government and I made my contribution. I am sure everyone else here in their respective positions in this country, you are also serving. And therefore, the objective is really to qualify and occupy a space, make a contribution to our nation building, and then we are able to move forward while maintaining our pathline, which is promotion of good corporate governance. I think with those remarks, we really want, again, as an institute, to appreciate you are finding time to come and interact with us on this very important subject matter. We are parented to the Ministry of National Treasury. That's our parent ministry. So that we make our contributions in terms of our mandate through that particular ministry. So without much ado, once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you for coming, and we look forward to a very good interaction in this forum. Let me also, before I close, say this. If, Dr. Wayne, you can be upstanding, this profession is not for lawyers only. It is not just for accountants only. It is not just for the CSS only. This gentleman standing here is also an architect. Are you aware? Please, if you are not aware, take note. Yes, please appreciate him. Thank you. I know that Professor here is also an accountant. Yes, we appreciate that. And many more others. And therefore, we invite you. It doesn't matter which field you are in. And we want to request you to be our ambassadors. Share with many other students regarding this profession. I'll finish with this short story. When I served as the CEO of the Institute from the year 2000 to 2013, I served for 13 years. I still remember that. One day, a young man came into the office without an appointment. I am not a person of appointments, but it's good also to have appointments, especially when you want to succeed in doing what you want to do. He came, and then my secretary came and told me there is someone who wanted to talk to me. And then somehow I had a few minutes in my hands, and I allowed him to come in. I thought I was going to spend about 15 minutes with him. But let me tell you, that young man who was 24 years old, we spent over 1 hour with him. We had a cup of tea because of the many things that he told me. At 24 years old, he had already finished his first degree. He has done his MBA, and he was already enrolled for a doctorate program. And on top of that, he had already done CPA. He was a CPAK, and he was also a CPSK at 24 years. You know, that that, created anxiety in myself to understand him more. And I asked him, how did you manage at 24 years to be at this level? And then he explained to me that he got to know about CASNEB when he was at Utumishi Academy, I think in Gilgil. Yeah, you visited, as an institution, you visited them. And when he finished his O-level exams, as he joined the university, he registered for CASNEB. And that's how he was able to run parallel his degree program and the professional learning. That's how he managed. And once you do one, the other one becomes very easy because you are given a lot of exemptions. What am I saying you? My parting shot is this. Those of you who are students, you have a lot of time in your hands. And now I can even speak as a parent. You have a lot of time in your hands. That time which you have, utilize it in a defined way, in a planned way, and you'll be able to succeed very well. As you do your degree program, of course, don't compromise on your degree program, but this other time, which you are not realizing you have a lot of time, I can tell you. Get to register yourself with ICS, and that's what I'm promoting. Register yourself as a certified secretary student, and by the time you are finishing your degree, you will have your professional qualifications on your shoulders. May God bless us all. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Let's have a really, really big round of applause for those remarks. Mr. Chairman, you've talked a lot about time and how we use it. And the next speaker will demonstrate to you what you should be thinking about in the context of your career development. And I will take time to read his accomplishments, because I hope there will be many Professor Nicholas's Letting in the next 20 years that will match up to these accomplishments. Do you want to hear all these accomplishments? And then start thinking about yourself and a lot of the prefixes and suffixes you have to introduce. So I will, it's a pity he has not yet put his titles here. I was hoping there is his email is a very powerful, it's a signature in itself. So Professor Letting he has a PhD from the University of Nairobi. He's highly decorated with a lot of national awards, EBS, a high state commendation, and he's an associate professor at the KCA University. He trains in several modules for the Strathmore University Business School. He's in fact the effective head of the training department. He's currently the CEO of CASNEB. And I was smiling with one of the younger colleagues there in front and saying, please make sure you don't leave without having a sidebar with him, because you are right in the heart of those exams, and it's good to know good people. More than that, he has 25 years experience in academia and in industry. He's an astute scholar and has taught at several institutions, including 7 universities within this republic, and has published extensively. Dr. Jaramba, you must give me these figures of yours, because I can see the number of master's degree students that he has supervised. I'm sure, Dr. Jaramba, you're very decorated in this area, but I don't have your details, unfortunately. He is a fellow of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, a fellow of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, a fellow of the Kenya Institute of Management, a fellow of the Institute of Certified Investments and Financial Analysts, and a member in good standing of the Institute of Directors and the Institute of Human Resource Management. I say this because there is a world that is beyond your degrees, and you need to be very aware of that world and the accomplishments that you make when you get into that world. Prof, this is truly inspiring. He was a member of the Council of ISPAC, ICS, ISIFA, is currently also a member of the Institute, as you've heard. But more than that, very recently he was elected as the chairman of the Association of Professional Societies of East Africa. So he is my chairman as I sit on that council, and he's a council member in several of these bodies, as you've heard earlier. He's been awarded the Elder of the Order of the Burning Spear in 2020, and in 2012 he received the Head of State Commendation, both being presidential recognitions of what he has accomplished. And please note this, he has volunteered in a very wide array of areas, and I wanted to caption that because there is a link that's established between people who volunteer their time and the success that they achieve because they are ready to serve society. His academic credentials you are all aware of, and he holds several certificates. He doesn't just sit in offices, but I think his philosophy is that of a continuous learner. These days we speak about people who are learners by heart because they have discerned that the classroom is not within walls, but it is within the boundaries of life's experience. Ladies and gentlemen, remember what we said at the earlier stage. Think about your 50-year-old version and be challenged by the credentials of Professor Nicholas Letting. Karibu sana, Professor. It's an honor to have you with us. Please, a round of applause.
I want to project something. For them to harness a projector. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mutuma. Our colleagues here from the University of Nairobi, my colleagues in council, our chairman of the institute, FCS Joshua Mbua, our MC of the day, CS Dr. Wayne Mutuma, our CEO of the institute, FCS Karanja, our colleagues in the secretariat. I can see Dr. Gitonyo there, one of our very strong member of the institute. I can see our council member there, CS Hoej. Good morning, everyone. Good morning once again. Allow me to say that I thank God for this far we are together this morning. And as we come through this, I had a presentation. I do not know whether it's possible to project so that you can see. I bring you greetings from KASNEP and UPSEA and ICS where I sit, and for the purpose of this meeting or this session this morning is just to let you know that as Dr. Mutuma said, we are going to discuss a lot of things today, but the reason why I think I was invited by the Institute today was to talk about developing a career in corporate governance. And I was given specific instructions by our CEO at the Institute and his team. So if it is possible to make a projection, then I will be able to do that. But the topic of my session this morning is developing a career in corporate governance, and I'll make a very brief presentation. I'm sure there will be a session for questions and answers. Before I go into this place, the reason why we are here today is to promote corporate governance. And what is corporate governance? What is corporate? Corporate is a combination of two words, the word corporate and the word governance. Corporate is is a legal entity that is separate and distinct from its owners. Corporate, that one you know. I am informed that most of the students here are lawyers and other business courses students. I also want to make a confession, Mwalimu. I recently got admitted to do law in the University of Nairobi, although I'm yet to start going to class, so I'm also a student. And I also happen to be a graduate of the University of Nairobi, having pursued very many other qualifications from the School of Business. I did Bachelor of Commerce and MBA and PhD from the University of Nairobi. But in addition to what Dr. Mutuma shared, I also have done quite a number of all 3 qualifications from CASNEP. And I want to say that at the end of this session, if I fail in anything else, I would like you to register as a student of CASNEP to pursue a course in corporate governance, which is good also as an additional qualification for you as a lawyer or as a student. So a corporate is a legal entity that is separate from its owners, and governance is the way organizations are directed, controlled, and guided. So corporates possess many of the same rights and responsibilities as individuals, and they can enter into contracts, loan and borrow money, sue and be sued, hire employees, own assets, and pay taxes. That one you know. I'm just refreshing in your mind. And what's governance? It is derived from a Latin word, and I was hoping that somebody was organizing for a projector. Governance, on the other hand, is derived from the Latin word kubenea, which means to rule or to steer. Over the years, the term has found significant relevance in the corporate world. And the world that we are in now, in the last 30 or so years, this word of governance has been very emphasized. So I have also just reminded us that corporate governance is the way organizations are led and directed and controlled. The biggest element of corporate governance is what is called board of directors. These are individuals, men and women, who have the requisite experience and qualifications and are responsible for the overall governance of their institutions. There are 3 sets of institutions the world over, maybe 4. The first one is public sector organizations. We also have the private organizations, and we also have the not-for-profit organizations. And we also now have the 4th one. Dr. Mutuma mentioned to us about family business. There are now family businesses which eventually become either private and eventually sell shares, or become public once they sell shares to the public, members of the public. So boards of directors are responsible for overall governance of the institutions. Now, the history of the corporate sector, I will be discussing this morning about corporate sector, which has different nomenclature in different countries. In Kenya, we call ourselves certified secretary, but globally, other people call themselves corporate secretaries or chartered secretaries, among other nomenclature. The growth of the corporate secretary profession in Kenya is dated back to 1988, as the chairman of the institute just told us, reminded us, when the act was established. But before that, there have been people who had been trained and examined by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of the United Kingdom. So the growth of the corporate secretary profession, while the notion of the company secretary is deeply rooted in the traditions of English common law, present-day authority and stature for the role was established in the English Court of Appeals in 1971. I'll be sharing this presentation for your own reference later on. While presiding over the panorama developments in Guildford Limited versus Fidelis Furnishing Fabrics Limited, Lord Denning established a precedent for the modern-day company secretary as an officer of the company with extensive duties and responsibilities, giving rise to the widely recognized executive position of Chief Administrative Officer. Corporate secretaries are governance experts and charged with the role of being advisors on how various institutions are governed. The corporate secretary profession is recognized in law in many jurisdictions, including Kenya. Among the Commonwealth countries, that profession has been well entrenched in the constitutions of the countries that practice good governance. And I therefore want to give you that assurance that we are in the right track in Kenya. We have been assured that with the law in Kenya that was done by our founders of the Institute in the 80s, leading to the establishment of the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya. And the nexus between the Institute of Certified Secretaries of Public Secretaries of Kenya and CASNEP had already been established earlier on in the 70s. In 1977, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya was set up. But before that, in 1969, the Kenya Accountants and Secretaries National Examination Board, CASNEP, was established under following the recommendations of a commission that was established by the founding president of Kenya, the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, to try to see what can happen in Kenya, particularly with regard to establishment of Africanization of professional courses, especially in the accountancy and the corporate governance or corporate secretarial. And that is why, in 1969, the Kenya Accountants and Secretaries National Examination Board was established to administer 2 examinations. First of all, before administration of examinations, CASNEP is responsible for developing syllabi or syllabuses for those 2 professions at that time, although we have now extended to other qualifications. I'll bring you up to speed in that area. So in 1969, the first qualifications that were being administered, there were syllabuses developed, and training was offered at Kenya Institute of Administration, former Kenya Institute of Administration, now the Kenya School of Government. Then it said it's best to move to town in Development House. That's where CASNEP started and moved on to. Subsequently, in the 90s, CASNEP moved to where it is today at Upper Hill, not far from the Kenyatta Hospital. Now, I will take us through the terminologies used in the corporate secretary's profession. Depending on the country of jurisdiction, various terms are used to refer to corporate governance professionals. In the United Kingdom, Canada, Hong Kong, Australia, and South Africa, the professionals are known as chartered secretaries. In India, the company secretary is the most prevalent terminology used, just like in Kenya, where it is used to refer ourselves as certified secretaries working in companies. Corporate secretary is commonly used in the United States of America, while government entities in Kenya use corporation secretaries. And in the institute, we prefer to call ourselves certified secretaries. And that is how CASNEP examines. We examine, and I'll shortly be sharing to you to register as a student of CASNEP, and then eventually be a student member of the institute, so that then you can derive the benefits of being as a professional member. I will now, with the permission of the chair and the master of ceremonies, I will now focus on developing a career in corporate governance. A career in corporate governance is highly rewarding. Some of the titles and positions held by certified secretaries today include, among others, company secretary or corporation secretary. If you go to any company like KenGen, Kenya Power, you hear somebody called corporation secretary or a company secretary. Chief executive officers like myself are also supposed to be corporation secretaries or certified secretaries. There's a lot of debate as to whether the CEOs should also be secretaries, but that is a debate that is currently obtaining in the Institute and other stakeholders space. There's a position of board secretary, there's a position of governance advisor, a governance and compliance manager, governance and ethics manager, shares registrar, university registrar, trust secretary for trustees, for trust deeds, for trustees or trust organizations and foundations, and certified secretaries in practice. These are some of the nomenclature used in our profession of the corporation and certified secretaries. There are a number of job opportunities that people with a qualification examined by CASNEP and especially members of the Institute would go and occupy or run with. Some of them, among others, the list I'm sharing here is not exhaustive, but it includes the jobs or areas of employment include being policy formulators and consultants in governance and compliance officers, ethics officers, administrators at county and national levels and in the private sector, and then governance auditors, as well as trainers and facilitators. Allow me to go back to the one on administrators at county government. I want to make an assumption. One of the reasons why our chairman of the Institute today, FCS Joshua Wambua, was tapped in to go and assist the then governor for Makueni, Professor Kivuda Kibwana, was because of his experience. I remember one time our chairman, then he was I think our CEO invited Professor Kibwana to the Institute. We used to invite Professor Kibwana to be our speaker for those events, for gala dinners, annual seminars. And I am sure the good professor must have seen some good talent from our long-serving CEO at that time, who then later on was tapped to become the chief CC for Makueni County. And I think he did a very fantastic job there, returning a very good results in the governance of the county government. Indeed, it was a very, very good example. Many other counties visited Makueni, including other people from other countries coming to Kenya to visit, to see, and to learn from that county. Maybe you can clap for our chairman. So apart from these opportunities that you have learned today about possible opportunities, I also consultancy services. I've seen people running consultancies in corporate governance, and they are very, very successful. As advisors, a certified secretary may advise on several things, on recruitment of people, on succession planning processes in organizations, directors' responsibility, including what is called fiduciary obligations. Corporate governance is a very fertile area. It gained a lot of ground in the early 90s, in 1992, following what happened in the United States of America, what is normally called Sarbanes-Oxley, the Parmalat issues that came, where there were some audit queries, a lot of corruption issues, and the United States of America developed some codes of conduct on what needs to be done in organizations to avoid conflicts of interests. You can also consult during board evaluations, chief executive officer evaluations, board committee composition, communication between and among directors and officers, public relations, charitable organizations or contributions, such as trusts as well as foundations, corporate calendars and governance audits, among very many others. The Institute has a lot of these things on offer today. I want to move first to look at some of the roles of the certified secretaries. First is to be the conscience of the board, to advise board on issues that require to be done. And remember, board are the leaders of the organizations at the top. They are the board are the ones who appoint the CEO and the top management. And so during the process of recruitment and maybe deployment of staff, the chief, the corporate certified secretary or the corporate secretary will definitely give a role there. They also arrange meetings of the board of directors, management committees, and annual general meetings, and they coordinate activities. They also ensure the compliance of the institution and the board of directors with relevant rules, laws, regulations, resolutions of the board and the meeting. They provide support for the directors and executives to attend training courses in their relevant areas. They also arrange directors' training, briefings, and induction for newly appointed directors. They also inform directors and executives of any changes in regulations in their performance of their daily duties, evaluating the performance of the board of directors, and preparing and keeping documents of the company in a very secure environment. And now, with the coming in of technology, we expect the future corporation secretary or certified secretary to be knowledgeable in digital recording, and I'm sure that our colleague in the BRS will be sharing some experience. We are moving into digital space, and there are some things that will happen now at the comfort of your phone or your computer or at home. Now, in terms of corporate secretary profession in Kenya, I have indicated that it was established formally in 1988 under the Certified Public Secretaries Act of Kenya, Chapter 534 of the Laws of Kenya. It is also entrenched in the Companies Act, number 17 of 2015, and the County Governments Act 2012 for secretaries to the county public service boards, among other statutes. State entities are governed in accordance with Code of Governance for State Corporations, what is popularly called Mongozo, which was set up and gazetted and signed as by the then president in 2015, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. So these are some of the guiding principles of the corporate governance secretarial in Kenya. In the Companies Act, and I'll give highlights of this because I don't want to take a lot of time. Companies Act 2015, under section 243(1), requires a company with paid up capital of 5 million shillings or more to employ the services of a company secretary. That indeed is an opportunity for any student, any professional certified secretary to get a job in any company, listed company or otherwise. Section 244 requires every public company to employ at least one company secretary. And those, of course, those company secretaries may be full-time or part-time. So Section 246 sets out the qualifications of a company secretary, which must have requisite knowledge and experience to discharge the functions of a secretary of the company, and must have passed certified secretary's final examination offered by CASNEP and postgraduate work experience, and also a member of the Institute of Certified Secretaries of Kenya. The person must be the holder of a practicing certificate issued under the Certified Public Secretaries Act. And I've seen the CEO, the executive officer, I'm sure, CS Mulwa, is around. I think I've seen Mulwa. Patrick Mulwa is somewhere. Yes, Mulwa. Yes, that is, I will be mentioning something. That's Mulwa. You can clap for him. Is the executive officer of the Registration of Certified Secretaries Board. And he registered all of us who are members of the Institute many years ago. All of us have different times of when we entered the Institute. County Governments Act, Section 58, requires each county public service board to have a certified public secretary of good professional standing, nominated and appointed by the governor with the approval of the county assembly to be the secretary of the county public service board. I think this is the entry point at which FCS entered before it became now the CES, the CEC of Makueni in devolution, as well as other, I think, finance and other areas. Section 59(2) of the same act requires secretaries of the boards of cities and urban areas to be certified public secretaries of good professional standing. What we are saying is that it is not enough to say you have completed being a student of CASNEP and you have done all the examinations successfully. It's also expected that you move ahead to be as a member of the institute in good standing, there are three things that will require for you to be in good standing. One is to register as a member of the institute. Two, to pay your subscriptions. Three, to attend what is called continuous professional development programs, which are currently in form of physical attendance to programs, as well as virtual attendance, or both, where you can attend physically and also virtually. So I want to encourage you. I've been chairman of the institute some time back, and I'm now a council member of the institute. Sometimes we find our members who registered many years ago have stopped being active members because they are no longer attending workshops. And I give this example and say, can you imagine going to visit a doctor who qualified 30, 40 years ago? Some of you may not have seen quinine, where we used to be injected quinine. People used to be injected quinine when they had malaria. So if you go to a doctor who has never gone for a refresher course in medicine, they still think that quinine is still applicable today for treating malaria, yet people moved on to other things. So anyone who qualifies from CASNEP definitely needs to join the institute and be able to learn, to be more relevant, refresh your knowledge in new areas through the offerings given to members by the institute. Code of Governance for State Corporations is also one of the avenues for which members of the institute, graduates of CASNEP, are recognized. Mongoso recognizes ICS as the professional governance body in Kenya. Clause 1.13 of the code requires that only members of ICS who are accredited to conduct governance audits are engaged by state corporations to conduct annual governance audits. I'll give you some brief background. In 2014-15, the institute liaised or worked closely with state corporations advisory committees, CAC, to develop a code of conduct or governance, code of governance for public sector organizations, mainly the state corporations. And so one of the requirements is for those institutions to undertake what is called corporate governance audit. Now, Clause 1.20 provides for state corporations to appoint a certified secretary who is qualified as past the final CS qualification, and a member of ICS to assist in its board of directors in carrying out its roles, provide guidance to the board, and prepare and circulate board and committee papers. And as we come towards the end, because I know there will be more speakers after me, Certified Public Secretaries Act, Chapter 534, establishes the registration of Certified Public Secretaries Board, RCPSB, and it also establishes the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries. I know there is some amendment that's going on where the name may change from the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya to the Institute of Certified Secretaries. The Act also recognizes CASNEP, which was established under the Accountants Act of 2000. And of course, there was an earlier one of Chapter 531, now repealed. It became the Accountants Act of number 15 of 2008 as the examining body for the certified secretaries students in Kenya. I will quickly just again remind you about CASNEP. CASNEP is a state corporation. Sometimes people think it's a private organization. We are a state corporation. CASNEP is a state corporation under the National Treasury and Economic Planning, and it was established by the government of Kenya on the 24th of July, 1969. The establishment and operations of CASNEP are governed by 3 acts of government. Mainly the Accountants Act number 15 of 2008, which repealed the Accountants Act Chapter 531 of 1977 of the laws of Kenya, the Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya Act Chapter 534 of 1988, and then the Investment and Financial Analysts Act number 13 of 2015. So this course that we want you to register, if you are not, let me see by show of hands how many people are students of CASNEP here, those who have registered and are doing examinations. Can you raise up your hand? In fact, you please stand up because you are not very, I think, just stand up. I want to appreciate you because you are going to be our ambassadors here. so that people who don't know what CASNEP, what is certified quality. Yes, can you clap for these team members? I don't want to ask them which level they are, because maybe they are finished or they are starting. I've just been coming from reviewing the exam that will be administered in the next 3 weeks. So it's not going to be an easy exam. So prepare for it adequately. Yeah? To qualify as a certified secretary in Kenya, one must sit and pass the certified secretary's examination offered by CASNEP. And the curriculum is divided into 3 levels. One is foundation level, and then the intermediate and advanced. And a student who passes the examination is expected to undertake a research. We recently introduced what is called a research project, or attend a 5-day workshop on research methodology. In partnership with the Institute of Certified Secretaries, we now have that, particularly to make our graduates more relevant, more experience with the practical, and we empower them with practical experience. And I've had an opportunity to open and close those sessions, and the quality of presentations are very good. People are able to propose ideas on how to make annual general meetings better, for example, or how to deal with shares, how to update the share register, among very many other things. At foundation level, for those who have not attempted this, and I'm sure my colleagues, my students who are here, will tell you that there is a very simple paper called Management Principles and Practice. That is very simple paper, isn't it? Communication Skills and Records Management, another easy paper. Introduction to Law and Governance, another. Principles of Accounting and Taxation, Human Resource Management, Information Communication and Communication Technology. 6 papers that will open those opportunities for you to proceed to the next level, which is called intermediate level, where you'll come in contact with company law and public sector governance, policy and administration, as well as meetings, compliance and administration, and then financial markets and specialized institutions, corporate governance and ethics, research, consultancy, and advisory. And in the final level, which you call advanced level, we have strategic management, finance for decision making, governance and compliance audit, boardroom dynamics. These are well researched, well aligned and benchmarked qualification papers that has been benchmarked with other Commonwealth countries like Australia, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and other leading jurisdictions in the world. So we introduced a very unique, novel idea of having research projects, very much akin to what you do at your master's level. And we require this for you to do it so that you are, when you go to the market, when you go to work for your organization, either your own self-employment, or to work for an audit firm, or to work for an advocate's company, you have the experience. Now, there's a route to which lawyers take. There are those who pursue law and are given exemptions, particularly if they have completed Kenya School of Law and they have been admitted to the bar for several years. There are some exceptions, but I would like to encourage students who are young that you do not have to wait to get exemptions. You should consider going to class as you pursue your law degree or your other degree in the university. It makes you very well grounded in your area of your knowledge, because some of the advanced level qualifications or papers require some basic introduction. For example, I gave you the example of management principles and practice. It may not be difficult. It's a common paper in universities, most of them, communication skills. So I receive so many lawyers who want to be given, I see some of your colleagues saying they want to be given exemptions, which sometimes is possible to give, but I would encourage you to be well-grounded in that area by going to class and studying. I think I've seen a number of training institutions that have been accredited by CASNEP. Can I see any? I think Traction and Star College. Particularly, somebody will say, what do you do? Where do I study alone? I want to request training institutions to stand up, the representatives from the training institutions. Yes, that is Bwana Wanyona, is from Star College. Can you wave to us, Brother Onyona? Yes, and that is which? Kenya School of Law. Thank you so much. We have accredited Kenya School of Law, Star College, Traction, and other institutions within Nairobi. They can train you either physically or virtually if you are very interested. So, as I wind up, how do you register as a student of and book for CS? You have to visit www.casnep.org. This presentation will be shared with you so that you can go through it, and then navigate to what is called the student portal. We have gone digital, and then you create your student account, giving all your email, their contacts. There we don't collect information the way the Worldcoin is collecting information using your eyes. We collect information by you filling in a space, your ID and whatever. Register as a student by submitting the requisite documentation. Once approved by ourselves, the system will prompt you to pay Kenya shilling 7,500 as a student, as a registration. And you normally give your pay bill number there and then you enter your M-Pesa PIN, and you will now receive your registration number, and which will be sent to your email. And now when you qualify for exemptions, you can apply. If you are a young student pursuing, you can do all the courses that are available there, and then you book for your examinations. I want to encourage you. We would like you to do a minimum of 6 months. A number of people, I think they shut away. But we like you, if you register today for exams, we want to encourage you to do the exams of December, not the one for August. Because August is this month. You can do it from December or even April. We have 3 sittings of examinations. We have an examination in April, and or an August and December. So you don't have to struggle to do the August examinations. You can do the one for December or the one for April, depending on when you are ready for that. Once you are booked and you are paid the requisite fees, you then get a timetable which indicates when you are supposed to be doing the exam. For exemptions, it is given on a paper by paper basis. We don't give for all the levels, the 3 levels. You just look at the paper based on your transcript for whatever you have done, either as a lawyer or as a student of law or business. A detailed exemption policy is available, and it shows you what you need to do. The policy is also available on the website, and you can visit that. And a separate examination scheme is available for advocates, which is based on postgraduate experience. I know that Mulwa is here. The board called the Registration of Certified Public Secretaries Board is established under the Act, and he is going to say something. Section 20, particularly now for CASNEP, Section 20 of the Act requires such a person who is a member of, who joins through RCPSB, should have been awarded by Examinations Board a certificate designated as the final certificate of Certified Public Secretaries Examination. So that is how it is. ICS is a membership organization whose mandate is given there to promote standards of professional competence and practice among its members of the Institute. That one you will be able to know. I think I've mentioned that severally when I was proceeding. Allow me this juncture to take a seat so that they can be able to, my other panel members can be able to make their presentations, and then I'm available to answer any questions thereafter. Thank you so much. Please allow me to invite our Master of Ceremonies to take the class.
Thank you again very much, Professor Nicholas Leting. We shifted the program slightly because he has an itinerary to catch. He has to leave town rather urgently. And so we played a bit with the protocol of activities today. There is going to be a panel to discuss a lot of those issues that he's presented on. Question about the profession, how to get in, how to transition through CASNEP, all the way until discussions around practice and being a member of the Institute. Thankfully, we have also the CEO of the board. I think I also saw him coming in, CS Patrick Mulu, I think is, oh, there he is. I want this gentleman to stand up because we have very strong historical ties. Yes, we are not from the Alliance. Where are those people of Alliance who are always referring us, telling us? But we are from an equally powerful contingent. That is my schoolmate many years ago. If you want to try and place my age, if you look at him and you can get it, then you'll know what generation I come in. A round of applause for CS Patrick Mulwa. Karibu sana. Thank you. At this point, I'm deeply honored to welcome a fellow faculty member, and more than that, a practitioner in the world of corporate governance. And more than that, I wish I had his full credentials. I would have been able to demonstrate the person that is at the helm of postgraduate studies at the Faculty of Law. What that essentially means, all of us who have passed through the faculty and are doing masters or are involved with a research project. Shall I take it even further? If you aspire to do a PhD and you want to know how to go about the process, the gentleman that I'm going to invite is at the helm of all of those activities. More than that, he's a member of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, and he sits in committees. He has been sitting in the Professional Development Committee. I think there has been some rebranding going forward. So when it comes to questions of training and capacity, he straddles both the academic side and the professional side. So he can speak at length about that. I also hope in his welcome remarks, you'll hear something about the kind of research that's being done in this area. I'm told successful nations pay a lot of premium to research. And that the biggest difference between us and our counterparts in the North is the amount of percentage, shall I say, the percentage of GDP that goes to research. So we want to give the emphasis required on this very vital activity, as we hear also from Dr. Jaramba on questions relating to the kind of projects that he's seeing. Finally, of course, he is a chair of a state corporation board that deals with civil aviation. And I'm sure if there are people who have got it right when it comes to corporate governance and the room for mistakes is almost minimal, it would be the airline industry. A mistake is very costly. So without much further ado, can we put our hands together and give Dr. Jaramba Gishuki a very, very big round of applause. Karibu sana, Dr. Karibu.
Our chief guest, the keynote speaker, Mr. Geoffrey Mende, on behalf of Professor Gethu Muigai, the chairman of ICS, and the council members, CEO of CASNEB, CEO of ICS, and my good friend, the Registrar of Companies, Madam Joyce Koesh. All protocols observed, students and young people, good morning. Now, today I'm here on behalf of the Dean of the Faculty of Law of this great university, Professor Winifred Kamau, who is away on official duty, and she couldn't be able to grace this occasion. So she asked me to represent her And I am delighted to be here to do that. So the main thing I intend to do today is to welcome you to the University of Nairobi. We all know this great university, and it's a university that we say it's one of a kind. The reason being that it's not just the oldest university in this country, but also perhaps I may say the greatest, without doubt, because it has produced quite a lot of great men and women who are doing a lot in this country and elsewhere in the world. Now, at the Faculty of Law, where we belong, we train students to be lawyers, and as it is happening in the rest of the world, we have now moved from just training lawyers for matters of law practice, but then we are more into interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary training, because the world we live in today is one that requires that you be knowledgeable in many aspects of life, so that you can be able to properly invest yourself for the betterment of society. Now, we are happy today to be in this forum where we are doing this together with the Institute of Certified Secretaries. The Faculty of Law and the Institute of Certified Secretaries have a long history. We have a working arrangement whereby we conduct many activities together, including the publication of the Governance Journal. And therefore, this is just one of the many activities that we do together. And we emphasize that as a university, we are very keen on academia and industry linkages, so that even when our students leave the university, they are able to enter the job market as if they have experience. You know, young people complain a lot when they see advertisements for jobs saying that you need to have this degree and 5 years experience or 2 years experience. And they keep asking, where do I get the experience when I'm leaving the university? So when you get the opportunity one day to go for an interview and you ask about the experience, if you come from the University of Nairobi, say that you have 2 or 3 or 4 years experience, because the industry linkages that we have give you that experience. So remind them that where you come from, you are given the experience from the university itself because of the linkages that we have with the market. So the solution to enterprises in Kenya and elsewhere actually lies in corporate governance. That is where we need to put a lot of emphasis, because we have trained and we have been trained on many other specific areas: law, accountancy, architecture, etc. But then we still have challenges in building enterprises that last. And therefore the solution to that is in how we govern those enterprises. Now, if you need to be part of the corporate space, therefore, you need to appraise yourself about governance. It is no longer enough to just say that you are a lawyer, you are an accountant, or you are in this or this other profession. Therefore, it is important that what we are doing today is introducing you to one of those professions that you can work on for you to be able to enter the job market and also, practice such a profession. And therefore, we are grateful for the Institute to partner with us to introduce you to this great profession of certified secretaries. Now, our courses at the Faculty of Law include courses that are basically related to corporate governance. To begin with, of course, at the undergraduate level, we offer courses such as law of business associations, so which include company law and so on. And therefore, we give that foundation that enables you to have the basic understanding on how corporations run. At the master's level, we have various areas of study. We have one thematic area where we offer Master of Laws in Corporate and Financial Law. And in Corporate and Financial Law, we deal with all aspects of companies. And one of the main courses, or the key courses we offer at that thematic area, is Corporate Governance and the Law. And therefore, we teach as a specific course unit this area of corporate governance. And we have seen that actually it's that one of the most popular courses that we have at the master's level. In addition to that, what we do is that our master's program requires that once you do the coursework, then you also take a project paper. Now, we have seen that a very good number of our master's students undertake project papers in corporate governance. And again, we have seen that our MC today, Dr. Mutuma, whenever he identifies a master's student interested in corporate governance, I see him now taking them through to the next step of actually publishing the project paper in corporate governance. That is to say that we do not just stop at teaching you corporate governance. We actually encourage you to undertake your project in corporate governance, and beyond that, actually to publish what you have done in that research, so that the world can consume the knowledge that you have created. And therefore, we are very keen on this area of corporate governance, and it is a growing area that we are encouraging everybody who would be interested in matters corporate to actually undertake for purposes of your future, for purposes of career growth. And therefore, again, I would say that I'm delighted to host this corporate governance career affair as a university, as the Faculty of Law of the university. And we welcome you to this university, not just today, but also even into the future. Those who are undergraduate students, we welcome you for our master's programs. Those who have taken master's degrees, we welcome you for our PhD courses. Indeed, we have PhD programs that one can specialize in corporate governance, among other areas. And therefore, we welcome you to undertake the courses that we have. And therefore, lastly, what I would say is that enjoy yourself even as we proceed for the rest of the day, as we have officially now opened this particular fair today, so that we can all benefit from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, Professor Leting, there is your contact person. You are thinking of a career in law. There is your professor seated on your left-hand side. I can see you exchanging telephone numbers. And this is how business is done, ladies and gentlemen. You seize your opportunities while they are alive. I'm sure you're all waiting for the tea sessions. People are not guarded with their contacts, emails. Please get as many contacts, emails as you have seen our good professor has taken them. And when you wake up 3, 4 years, 5 years from now, you'll hear he has another qualification there, an LLB somewhere. So at this point, I would like to welcome Mr. Geoffrey Mende, who will be speaking on behalf of the Attorney General Emeritus. If many of you have interacted with Professor, you will not only know his academic side, you will be more conversant with his professional side. Professor Githu Muigai has done extensive work in a lot of areas. He's the epitome of what you want to do with your career. So he's not just a practicing advocate, senior counsel, and certainly the AG, but he is moved into the areas of dispute resolution, does a lot of arbitration, both internationally and locally. More than that, he sits at the helm of matters corporate governance. Not just because he was the AG and the principal legal advisor to government, but because his interaction with the Institute has been so extensive from the very early stages. He is actually a fellow of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, and he is one of those large footprints in terms of our membership and what we have done in the landscape of Kenya. So he will be ably represented by my good friend and colleague, Mr. Mende. He's going to speak about our professions, what it means for you as young and budding aspirants in this area. Please pay attention. Feel free. There will be a lot of Q&A that emerges after this. So without any delays, please let us welcome Mr. Geoffrey Mende as he takes to the podium. Karibu sana, Prof.
Thank you, Bwana Mtuma. The Chair, CEO, and Council members of the ICS, the CEO of CASNEB, Professor Letting, other lecturers present, representative to the Dean, University Faculty of Law, lecturers present, students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I have been asked to step in for the chief guest, Professor Githu Muigai, Senior Counsel. We work together. He sends his apologies for not being able to be here to grace this occasion. But due to the daunting tasks that I've been given, I wish to make two disclaimers. First, I don't have a speech to read on behalf of Professor Githu Muigai, Senior Counsel. And second, though I have worked in teams doing corporate governance audit, I am not a corporate governance expert. I have not yet joined the ICS, although Bwana CEO informs me I have qualified by virtue of my years in practice as an advocate. For this reason, I do not propose to speak about an area in which I have no specific expertise. Fortunately, for you students, we have an able panel before us and some in the auditorium who will speak specifically to the subject of corporate governance. What I propose to do is to share my thoughts that may be relevant as you make a decision in your career from here going forward. And as you will be told, a career is a lifelong journey. It's not an event, it's a lifelong journey. So I just want to share my thoughts from my few years' experience as an advocate. And let me start by saying that choosing a career is not easy. Choosing a career is not easy. For most of us, we will struggle to choose a career path. We will make mistakes along the way, by choosing a career which we are not equipped for, we have not interest in. And that is mostly because at the time we are making the decision about our career, we are mostly influenced by third parties. And we don't internalize the information we are given to our specific circumstances. When a student has finished KCSE and has been given their results, you are asked to select which course you're going to do at the university or in college, without having a deep conversation with yourself about what am I good at? What are my abilities, natural abilities? What are my taught skills? You may end up falling into peer pressure, choosing what your friends are choosing. Maybe your friends are making the decision based on an informed conversation, both with themselves and with third parties. You may also be influenced by your parents, who may urge you to take a course in line with what they are doing. If your father is a lawyer, you end up choosing law. If your mother is a doctor, you end up choosing medicine. But without internalizing what about yourself ties up or is in line with this career path. Ladies and gentlemen, this is normal. And I am a statistics in this. After completing high school, I received the University Joint Admission Board forms to fill, to choose which course I am going to do. My mother, who was then a nurse at the Rift Valley Provincial General Hospital, had been extolling the virtues of doctors. That doctors are respected in society. They are rare. That only the best can be doctors. It also helped, and this point she made repeatedly, that they earn the highest of all the professions. By the time I was considering filling these forms from the Joint Admissions Board, my mother was preaching to the converted. I was definitely going to pick medicine as my first choice, and I did pick medicine as my first choice. My second choice was education. Similarly, my mother had spoken to me about teachers, that if I had a Bachelor of Education degree, I would never lack a job. At that time, the government used to employ all graduates to become teachers. And she used to extol the virtues also of teachers being those who nurture the next generation. And you can never fail to get a job, so I was happy to take that as my second choice. Fast forward to one Friday afternoon, and I have gone to see my mother in hospital. She's admitted, she's unwell. Same hospital. The short version of this story is, I stumbled upon an accident victim who was badly injured and bleeding profusely. And doctors are scurrying around trying to attend to that victim. There was so much blood. There was a lot of noise, screams. And what I'm told is that I fainted. I woke up an hour or two later, and the doctor said that what I saw was too much for me to handle. Needless to say, from that experience, it put paid to my misconceived notions that I could ever become a surgeon. I changed my course selection, because that time we had two opportunities to change. You pick and then you could change. I changed my choice. And this time I had a real conversation with myself about what my abilities are, what my interests are, what my passions are, and I chose to study law. I have been an advocate of the High Court of Kenya for the last 19 years, and I enjoyed the job. So as you consider your career choice, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because mistakes will be made by most of you. I made mistakes. We all make mistakes, and that is part of life. Where you don't want to find yourself is a paralysis, where you can't make a decision. If you think about it, when you go to a supermarket to buy juice, and there are 20 types of juice, tropical, mango, orange, name them, 20. You can be stuck there not making a choice because of the variety that is there. In fact, they say the fewer options you have makes it easier to make a decision because you don't have too much choice, which may be the problem you have, because now, in your day and age, there are many options you have to take in terms of a career path. Our time, there were very few that we knew about. So don't be too afraid to make a mistake. You'll make a mistake. Try as much as possible to make an informed decision, the best decision you can make with the information you have. So gather the information and use that information to make a choice. I'll repeat that a career is a lifelong course. It is not an event. It gives you the chance to use your skills, interests, and knowledge and ambitions to solve society problems. It is therefore important to be very deliberate about this decision. And in my view, from my experience, you must first look inward. You must first introspect. Ask yourself, who am I? What are my natural abilities? What do I enjoy doing? What are my values? What are my life's goals? If you are able to answer these questions honestly, brutally honestly with yourself, you are halfway through this process of choosing a career path. The mistake that normally happens is this. We lie to ourselves that I am an ethical person. I like ethics. I like to follow rules. If you are actually not a person who likes to follow rules, a person who's not inclined or predisposed to follow rules or to be ethical, you will have a challenge in taking a course and being effective as a corporate governance expert. Because the very essence of corporate governance is ensuring that companies are run efficiently, effectively, ensuring transparency to bring value to the shareholders, but ensuring all stakeholders, including employees, your suppliers, are all taken care of, or their interests are taken care of. It's a huge balancing act. It requires transparency. You have to be ethical, and not by saying, but by being, by acting. And as the chair and I think the CEO of Kashmir mentioned, if you are a CS for a corporation, you are their ethical standard point. They look at you. You're supposed to give guidance to the board in terms of ethics, in terms of compliance. So if you're not predisposed as an individual at a personal level, if one of your values is not in line with being an ethical person, following rules and that kind of thing, you may want to look elsewhere. So this internal introspection is very important to inform this career choice. To the lucky few, the decision will be simple. They have clarity of thought and they already know what they're going to be going forward. But to most of us, it's going to be a difficult decision to make. Ultimately, some career paths are taken out of pragmatism. Career paths are not always linear. You may be forced to take detours. Some of you will need to pay bills to make ends meet. You may fail to qualify for the chosen career path. If your qualification is to have a degree in a certain area or certification, you may fail the exam severally, and therefore it impedes your progression to the career you're looking at. Alternatively, the career path may not materialize at the time of your choosing. So you will have to make tough decisions. What else can I do with what I have? Just because I have failed in this does not make me a failure. As Winston Churchill said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. I thank you.
Wow. Success is not final. Let's say good students. Council member Dr. William Kema, complete the quotation. Success is not final. It is. I see Doctor, you are consulting. It is the lack of courage to continue that matters. A very, very big round of applause for Geoffrey Iman. That was just absolutely stunning. And we came, I just didn't say one or two personal things. In that path of our career aspirations, we have been in the trenches with Mr. Imende at different points in time. And we created a comradeship and comradeship because of the suffering of trying to beat the professional hurdles. And professional exams are not a joke. So at one particular point in time, we used to meet every Saturday, sometimes as early as 7 o'clock, to prepare for exams that were going to come in several months. And right until the exams, I'm just telling you that those of you who think exams are over, when you leave the university, the hardest ones may be waiting for you, as you heard from Professor Letting, after the university. So thank you very much. It is really an honor to have you. You will have a lot of CSR now that you have inspired us so much. Every time we have a career fair, you can be sure that you'll be very heavy on demand to help our young professionals. Now, we are at an interlude. That point, I don't think they do that anymore. But those of us who used to watch movies, Patrick, you remember those old days in Kenya cinema and all those things, whether you are watching from the grassroots, huko kijijini, where you had a translator. You would have a translator as the movie is going on, and if you understood the language, you would know the translator was also conning every phrase. You remember those movies that you had outside in the grass and they were beaming? There was something they called an interlude. We don't see them anymore. I don't think people have interludes. So we want to take a short interlude. We will do one exercise as the panel, the first panel transitions and takes to the podium. This is actually where the rubber hits the road. This is where the discussions become very lively. Let us, in that interlude, transition our chief guests, They will step from the podium. We can give them a round of applause as we get a new cast coming into play. Now, Mr. Imende talked about balance. And I have Melvin, maybe you can help me just get the other panelists to come to the podium. I think FCS, you may have left something I see. You are part of this panel. You are being asked to remain, not to leave. Yes. I think she's the one moderating the panel. Karibu sana. Now, corporate governance, career choices are about balance. At the same time, corporate governance is a question of balance. We want to do a very quick energizer. I will ask you all to be upstanding. Just very, very quickly, stretch, get yourself in motion before we welcome the next set of panelists. Gender parity, 2 volunteers. There you are. Courageous, there you are. I would also like you, a fast mover, because you don't know, maybe I'm giving out money and you're just looking. Coming up, I come up to the top. We need a ladies. We are talking corporate governance, and we want to watch this volunteers. Please have a seat, observe. We have a lady. Now, I don't want Wendy to look behind. I want her to look in front. She's looking in front? Okay. Now, this gentleman behind. I want them. No, there are no more Kenyans in this exercise. Look forward. Now, when you talk about governance, you're talking about good corporate governance, not bad. You are talking about something that you can trust to hold you together. True? Ni ukweli ama sio ukweli? Now, let us see whether Wendy has pure trust in this machinery that is lying behind her. I will ask her to do this. I want her to fall back, but I don't want her knees to bend. I want her to just fall back, completely relaxed, the way you fall on your bed. Uko tayari, Wendy?
Yes.
Yes. 3, 2, 1, action. How did you see her expression? Anyone? Some of us are in corporations where we are, I had someone say, tense. Because the infrastructure of governance does not allow you to do. Now look at how she does it the second time because of what has happened in the first time. Please, 2, 3. One, action. Makofi to our 3 volunteers. Thank you very much. So we want to now move to the next panel. I think CS Glory, you're the one moderating this panel. Let me confirm, or is it CS William Kiema? We have a very interesting panel. I just need to confirm. And the panel is moderated. Where is Joy? There she is. Oh, there she is. So I will now hand over to Joy because she will be moderating a panel that looks at opportunities in corporate governance. This is your session. Please feel very free. Engage. Ask the panelists questions. And don't be one of those people that are shy because you think maybe the question is not as intelligent. You might actually be asking it for a number of us. We are reserved, we want to ask it, but we are scared. So be the one who will ask, and then all of us will feel the joy that you have got answers that we needed desperately. So, CS Joy, karibu sana, welcome. Please feel free to introduce your panelists, and we are all ears. Karibu.
Thank you very much, CS Dr. Mutuma, and good morning, everyone. I hope we are having a good time learning about corporate governance. Are we? You don't look like you're having a good time. Yes. So welcome to our second session of the day, our panel. I'd like to take this opportunity to give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves and let us know what they do. Maybe I can start by introducing myself, as I know I've already been introduced, yeah? So my name is Joy Masika. I am the student leader of the CES Students Association Board, And I also work at the Institute of Certified Secretaries as a member service and advocacy officer. So, James, please, if I can have the second mic for the panel. But meanwhile, we can start our introductions from this other end.
Good morning. Is it good? Good noon. It's exactly noon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is FCS Salome Onyonka. I'm privileged to sit in this panel, and I look forward to interacting with you. I am FCS, as I said. FCS means Fellow of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, which means I've eaten enough salt around in this profession to be able to be called a fellow. Then I am I'm a corporate governance and HR consultant and practitioner. And I'm really passionate about guiding not just people who are at the start of their careers, but also seasoned professionals in organizations who are dealing with the ever-changing landscape of careers. Even, you'll be surprised that even in 30 years' time, you will still need advice on how to run your career. So I'm really passionate about that, and happy to be part of this panel for now. And just one thing, I was in the council member of the Institute of Certified Secretaries. I just finished my term a few months ago, so I still think of myself as part of council, but I'm a former council member.
A round of applause for FCS.
Thank you, FCS. Good evening, good afternoon. So we are awake. Good afternoon once more. My name is C.S. William Kema. I'm a member of the Institute. I'm a corporate governance practitioner. I practice in CS. I am also an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, practicing under the firm of Robson Harris, particularly corporate governance and governance audit. So I'm still and stroke CS. So I identify mostly with CS and the legal aspects of CS. I am the chair of the Young Members Association. We have an association as the profession. So we have several young members who are really coming up in the profession. And I'm also a lecturer at Kisii University teaching law. Yes. I'm glad to be here and to be back to my alma mater to get to share about something that I'm very passionate about, which is finding pathways really about in corporate governance space. I'm still finding mine. I think she said 30 years time you'll still finding yours. So I'm open to sharing experiences as we shape each other in our discussions. Thank you so much.
A round of applause for CS Kiema. It's very interesting hearing what he has to say. We like to joke that I am his mentor, when in essence he's my mentor. So thank you very much, CS Joyce.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joyce Koech. I'm a company secretary, a member of the council at the ICS. I'm an advocate of the High Court, and I serve as the registrar of companies in this republic. I'm excited to be here, and the reason I say this is because I see young people who are at a place in their lives where they are seeking to chart the path of their life. So it becomes an exciting opportunity to have a discourse with you. Perhaps as we have this conversation, you could at the end of the day, just have some clarity in terms of some of the opportunities which are out there. I remember such a conversation happened when I was doing my Form 4 several years back, and we had people from CASNEB visiting our school, and they talked about CPA, CPS, and I wondered, what is this? Because where I had been, I'd never heard about it. And fast forward, when I joined the University of Nairobi, doing my law, there were students who talked about, I'm doing part 2 of ICS at Strathmore. It took quite a while for me to make up my mind on the need to do it. Later on, of course, I enrolled and I did my CPS. So it's an exciting moment for me, and I hope we're going to have an interactive session with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for CS Joy. Yes, please, CS Kikete.
Good afternoon. My name is CS Gloria Kikete. I am a certified secretary, and I serve as the corporate secretary of the Institute of Certified Secretaries. I'm happy to be here. I was here many years ago during my first year induction. I'm an alumni of the School of Business. Thank you.
A round of applause for our panel. You can just keep the mic. Thank you very much for the introductions. I reckon that we have 2 lawyers on the panel, and I would like for you guys to just explain to us what, and maybe before we go to what corporate governance is this a profession for lawyers? Like, must I be a lawyer to be a CS? Maybe we can start with the lawyers.
That's a good question, and how I would want to answer that question is, you need not be a lawyer for you to have a conversation on corporate governance. Why do I say this? Thinking about yourself as a student, you could be running your side hustle. It could be, it's a small business which possibly could grow. For purposes of you to be able to run your business in a manner that it's going to yield, you need some knowledge on what this is all about. You could be doing whichever course. How I would look at this discourse on corporate governance is it's a multidisciplinary discussion which is relevant in all the fields. You could be a student doing medicine, you could be doing political science. When you talk about corporate governance, one of the speakers talked about the being. It's the aspect of who you are and what you do. In whichever place you work, ethics is something which distinguishes you from the crowd, because when you talk about corporate governance, you're talking about the kind of soft skills which distinguishes you in any area that you'd be operating. And when you talk about employability, when you're somebody who is ethical, then definitely, because many people would have the skills, the technical skills. It's about your soft skills, which are able to distinguish you even in the marketplace. So I would say that this is not a discourse for lawyers only. It is a discourse for every single professional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, CS. I think CS has given quite an elaborate response to that. And what I can add, by just looking at how we are in this panel, that will also constitute an answer that the profession is not just for lawyers. Governance is everywhere. It's quite a wide topic and a wide discipline. And in part of my practice and working with professionals, because one of the things that we have in this profession is that we are a close-knit community. So I've gotten the opportunity to interact with this FCS and even CS Gloria, and they are CSs of repute, very good in what they do. And I've also interacted with engineers who are sitting in boards, CEOs that are in engineering sector. I've interacted with doctors who are sitting at CEOs, and you can see that the level of exposure, though they may not be company secretaries, some of them aspire to be, it's a skill that is required by all and sundry, because it's how general institutions are run. And that would also include social institutions. For instance, in some other jurisdictions, like in the UK, the naming and the class, their type is that everybody in administration, they have what is called Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators. So administrators, and I think the speaker, Professor Letting, mentioned this, that as executives in some jurisdictions, you'll be required to be a corporate secretary. So that, in fact, would tend to shift the conversation on to making, or having everybody that is engaged in governance in one aspect or another to really be a member of this profession. And lawyers are just small portion of that wider pool of professionals that can become part of this profession.
Thank you very much, CS Kiama and CS Joy. So ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, the corporate governance profession is not a reserve for lawyers. I know that that's one of the notions that is out there, that this is a profession for mostly advocates. But as CS Kiama has said, this is a profession for all and sundry. It's a soft skill that we all need in all spaces, especially if you're doing administration. So thank you very much for that. And just moving on to the next question, maybe I'd like FCS to answer this. So why is it important for university students to have an understanding of corporate governance, even if they're not directly involved in the corporate world? Why should we be having such a discourse in a university and speaking to university students?
Thank you, Joyce. Now, why should we be talking to university students or people affiliated with university on corporate governance? First and foremost, closely tying to the first question, corporate governance has a set of skills that are very critical for the effective running of any organization, be it a family business, be it a big corporate or a small startup company. When you, and nothing you learn is a waste. So when you're at the university, you're just literally being prepared for work. Of course, you can't learn everything about work out there, but you're being prepared to step into organizations, to step into the corporate world. And corporate governance is the basis of the corporate world. If a company has, if you look at any of the big companies, you will find that what has led them from startup or a one-man show to a very big corporation is corporate governance, which gives the pillars for you to rise as an organization. So students here, I believe, are preparing for the world of work. And the world of work, to rise up as an organization, corporate governance is key. To rise up as a professional, sensitivity and consciousness to corporate governance is a must. And as, including churches, even for those of you who would like to start a church, because many of you might be led in that direction. If you do not have the pillars, if you have no idea what corporate governance is, you really will start something on quicksand, on sand. But once you are very clear about corporate governance, you will be able to set a foundation on solid rock. That's how I look at it. And that's why we are here, and that's why we like to take our time to do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for FCS. Yes, I like that we are setting a foundation for students who will form part of the corporate world in future. And maybe just CS Kema, you can explain to us some of these key concepts of corporate governance that students should even be aware of as we prepare them for the corporate world, and not just in the corporate world, some of these key concepts that they need even in their organizations as students. We've seen we have UoN SPLA, which is one of our partners that have partnered with us to organize this event. So maybe you can just talk about some of those key concepts that they need to incorporate in their life now as students, and that will be important even in the corporate world.
Thank you so much. Some of the key concepts that can be incorporated by students, I would start from how we define governance, which is governing, and we are governance has no level to it. Governance is just governance. So if we could have bad governance as a country, you can have bad governance in student politics, you can have bad governance at home. So it is very, very important to appreciate that when we speak about this concept, it's not far-fetched things that you practice 10 years to come or when you leave campus. So key concept, governance, number one, requires or mandates that you have a bit of structures and accountability. So there's a lot of things that students run which involve a lot of things that we are mentioning right now. I'm sure the association runs meetings and as different office holders. How is the roles and duties of different capacities of the officers or the student leaders that occupy a particular positions? For instance, I would mention about the student union, formerly known as SONU, has different structures with the chairperson, secretary general, and other positions. So all those, part of governance is that you ought to understand that institutions ought to be run with a structure to it. That, for instance, if I'm a chair, then there's a responsibility that lies with the chair. And there's a responsibility that lies with the SecGen, for instance. And there's a responsibility that would lie with the treasurer. So a bit of separation of roles so that one is not divested with the responsibility of everything. You're not the end into yourself. I think it's something that we have seen with the former, especially with the former body of SONU, where a particular person is everything. They are the chair, they are the treasurer, they are basically everything. But most important, apart from the concept of running the institutions, we ought to equip ourselves with the knowledge. And the knowledge is, Dr. Jaramba mentioned about a lot of the institutional linkages that the university is doing. We ought to equip ourselves with the concepts and the legal documents that surround, legal documents and policies that surround around governance. And most critical for students is that there are certain things which we must have the knowledge of, we must be prepared to address, especially particular trends that are actually happening in the world of governance. There is a lot of buzzwords which, as young people, we can easily capture compared to the other generation. Concepts like ESG, for instance. Concepts like artificial intelligence, the fourth and the fifth industrial revolution, there is now sixth industrial revolution. Such concepts and how the intersection of such novel concepts and governance, because they do affect governance, and the advantage of the advantage of the demography in which we come from, is we have the exposure and the ability to grasp some of this concept. So my challenge would be that we should be, as students, let's take time to want to know what is this buzzword that things that people are mentioning about? What is ESG, for instance? How does climate change affect issues to do with governance? And if you get to invest yourself in some of these concepts, then you find that you have set yourself apart from how government, because we are living, our society is in a continuous state of flux. There is constant rapid change that is happening. So we are better placed as students to be able to really know the intersection of that change, the intersection of new forms of technology and how they affect the continuous running of organization. And lastly will be CS Joyce would tell us that there's a lot. She mentioned that she's the registrar. And one of the things that happened, especially with the advent of COVID, was there was a lot of law was tinkered with by a lot of technology, because that was demanded because of the nature of things, the way they happen. And there's a lot of amendments around that on how companies and meetings and how we run companies is done. And it's still something that most people of the other generation are still struggling with. But I've been interacting with colleagues who are working in law firms. Most of the people that are running most of the things on some of the platforms are people in our generation. So get to invest in knowledge, get to know what is e-citizen, for instance, get to know how the BRS system operates, and get to know some of those compliance issues that are technology-oriented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CS Kioma. I like that you talked about the simple concepts such as separation of roles, even in a board. For instance, I served with you at the board of the Christian Union board when we were in campus, and we could see some of those things, but sometimes you realize emphasis is not laid on those things. You find the chair wants to become the secretary, wants to become the treasurer, and inform all the decisions, when in actual sense, this is a governance issue that we need to understand and grasp from such lower levels so that we end up not having problems in the future. So we can move on to our next question, which is how can promoting ethical practices and sustainability within Students' Association be carried forward into future governance roles to create lasting positive impact? So some of those things that we have talked about, how can we then ensure that these concepts are inculcated into students and have a lasting impact? We can have CS Kikete take us on that.
Thank you, Joy. So the ultimate goal of having good corporate governance is to have sustainability. And sustainability is basically to say the organization that you have today will outlive the current leadership or the current ownership of it. So as we bring corporate governance down to even our level as students, and I don't want to assume that all students are young, because some people go back to school later in life for various reasons, either they're changing careers or they didn't pursue a degree for whatever reason. So as we get to apply them at our level as students and in the outfits that we run, in terms of, they could be a club, it could be a professional association, it could be a Christian union. It's to say that whatever it is we do today, number one, it should be understood. We should know that whatever it is we are doing, it's not the person waking up today and deciding this is what we want to do, whether it's a chairman or whoever has set up that organization. We usually have something called the founder's syndrome, which means that the person who starts something believes that everything should go as they wish, and also because they are the vision bearer, they feel like, they do things without having documentation, without having processes, without consulting. And therefore, when they leave, and they leave because they've cleared campus, or their interests have changed, or they've relocated, for whatever reason that they will not be there, we need to have this organization of whatever nature outlive them. We have seen cases where, for example, I can give the example of Nakumat. The fall of Nakumat is attributed to several things, but one of those things is the fact that corporate governance principles were not really adhered to. Because it was a family business, the main director, who was Atul Shah, preferred that he and his 2 sons run the organization. So there are certain things that they did that were, of course, they were well intended, but because they did not have a view from somebody else, or they were not thought through in terms of documenting, consulting, they did some decisions that were not, that ended up eventually causing the downfall. And that's because corporate governance principles advocate for the fact that despite, apart from separation of roles, there should be like independent directors, for example, which means that on that board, there should be people who don't have a direct interest in that organization. Therefore, they can give advice that is objective. So for example, if it's a Christian union, obviously I'm assuming that the leaders are elected. So it could be elective positions or appointive positions, but there needs to be incorporated somebody else who could be an alumni or I think their patrons who are not students, so that they can give that third eye to see that these decisions that you are making, number one, are they able to sustain us into the future, and also are they thought through? So getting back to the decisions of Nakumatt, for example, there's this Nakumatt lifestyle, which is near here, so we all know it. That supermarket was in a building owned by the NSSF. And this proprietor decided to get a 20-year lease for that building. The reason was because he felt, let me get the whole building, get a lease, I'm sure the price wasn't too bad, and then sublet the rest of the building to other tenants, which was a brilliant idea. But he didn't look at the future, he didn't look at how sustainable is this decision. So when NSSF decided to start constructing above the supermarket, like extend the building upwards, the rest of the tenants felt it was no longer conducive for their business. Therefore, they moved out. But now, since Nakumatt itself has a 20-year lease with NSSF, they have to keep paying. So imagine they're paying rent for space they're not leasing out, and they can't pull out. Most likely, if there was somebody else on that board who, say, has a risk management capability, and also they're not, usually when you've started something, you're so passionate about it, you can't even see anything outside it. They would have looked at it and said, isn't 20 years too long? What if this happens? What if there are these changes in the market that would come? So that's why it's important that even as we do whatever it is we do, we look at it that tomorrow, if I'm the chairperson and I've left, and during my time there used to be students who, because they were student leaders, and they did things so passionately and they felt like it was so personal to them, they would finish BCom, enroll to law, start first year, finish law, enroll political science, just so that they remain being students. And that's not a good corporate governance thing, because good corporate governance says there needs to be term limits. You finish your term, you leave. And now that you're leaving, you need to leave behind structures so that the organization can live beyond you. Thank you.
We know who, but for my own security, we shall not mention names. Names are not allowed in this panel. So I've just remembered yesterday, FCS is looking at me. Our CEO was telling me how I have refused to vacate the seat of chairperson of a students' association board. But FCS, in my defense, she says you need to put up proper structures even as you move out and, in the process of succession. So we are in the process of setting up structures. CS students in the house, if you're interested in leadership, yes, we'll be rolling out the structures for that, and let it go on record that I have not refused to vacate that seat. It's actually one of the things that we are working on, creating structures that will last. As a governance student, I should not be in some of these issues. Thank you very much, CS Kikete. So this question I am asking on behalf of many young people. They have, some of them have whispered in my ear that, what is this thing all about? Why should I take time to do this course? Like, I already have a profession, maybe someone is doing BCom, someone is doing law, whatever course that it is, and they've interacted with people who solely practice CS. Is this a profession that pays? Can one depend on that profession as something that can sustain them? Yeah, so maybe just to talk about the dynamics of practice and what it looks like. Does it mean that if I am a BCom student and I decide to take the route of CS, I need to abandon my other profession? How can I merge the two so that I'm able to benefit from the same? I know we've talked about how corporate governance is an important aspect, that I need not to practice it, I need to use it in the organization that I am in or in the business that I'm doing. But now in terms of practice and in terms of remuneration and all that, yes. Maybe we can start with a practitioner on the panel, which I believe is FCS, and then we can have CS, or let's have CS Joyce, and then we have FCS from a perspective of a practitioner.
Thank you. Maybe I could answer the question from the perspective of working at the BRS as the Registrar of Companies. And I would want to say that we have so many entities which are registered in this country. And you'll find particularly some of the cases which have been in the limelight, where you find a big company at some point collapsing. And the question has always been why. You find that most business owners, they do not invest in proper governance structures. They do not invest in professional services. So I would look at it that this is something which is important. It's important for people to do this. One, if you're going to be a business owner, this becomes something which is quite relevant in terms of being able to build a sustainable organization. You could be engaged in an organization in different capacities. Knowledge in this profession does help you in terms of being able to bring the impact in the organization that you're serving. I would still insist that this is not strictly for a lawyer who could practice as a company secretary. There are certain jobs which certainly you cannot serve in unless you have such qualifications. For instance, to serve as a company secretary, you'll always find there are certain roles which are merged: head of legal and company secretary. This becomes a prerequisite for you to be able to serve in such an organization. You'll find that there are issues to do with risk management, which are not strictly for specific organizations. Being aware in terms of how to undertake risk management is something which, in whichever field, you'll find that it's a multidisciplinary it's a multidisciplinary course, which you find it becomes very relevant. I would, encourage anybody to, undertake this course. Why? You'll find there are people, you could be an advocate, you could be an accountant, and you have your CS qualifications, you have your CPA qualifications. These are skills which you never know which particular door it will open for you. In terms of whether remuneration, this is something which can put bread on your table, I would certainly say yes. And I would want to insist that the reason why I would say it would put bread on your table, not necessarily because you're practicing CS or you're a corporate governance practitioner. When you look at the kind of skills that you learn, the moment you inculcate them into your person, in terms of it makes you distinguishable. The moment you conduct yourself according to the principles of good governance, which is transparency, you talk about accountability, you find that it distinguishes you and it places you at a competitive edge among your peers. I would want to rest it there.
Thank you very much, yes. That was very profound.
Thank you. I think I have little to add on to what Joyce has said. She has put it so well. Being a CS is a multidisciplinary career. And does it put food on the table? Even as a practitioner, I confirm that it does put food on the table. But Joyce has put it very well. It is how do you go, even if I was to ask this about accountants or lawyers, it would be the same answer. Every profession does have the potential of making you extremely successful. But as Joyce put it, it's how do you embody these qualities that make up a CS? How do you embody them, and how do you go about setting your own structures? I said that you'll be surprised that very few people embody what they learn in class into their actual career. And what, for me, as an HR practitioner and a CS practitioner, a corporate governance practitioner, what is very, very clear to me, it's the embodiment of those principles at the individual level that distinguishes any professional. Whether you're talking about student leadership, there are guidelines and things that should be done for the student body, for example. And those principles, whoever embodies them, they will definitely rise high. Even in music, if we are to look at even the arts, or even what is the latest, blogging and stuff like that, there are principles to everything. How do you, as an individual, embody those principles in order to be able to rise? So in the CS profession, we have the company registration services, the company advisory services, we have the board advisory services and board support services, all those. And you can think of people in industry who are making millions. There are firms, there are CS firms that are making millions when a few, some cannot get by. Why? Because of how they've incorporated and embodied the principles and foundations of the particular profession. So I think even as a student, your marks are a good indicator of how you embody the principles of being a good student. And that also goes on to the career directly.
Wow. So if I'm to take anything from this discussion today, is how the important skills that you learn in corporate governance make you a distinguishable person, not just for the sake of practice as a profession, but in whatever sector or industry that we're in. So for all the students here who have been wondering why they should do the course of corporate governance, I think this is a good reason as to why we should all want to have that knowledge and to acquire that skill. So I'd like to know if there are any questions from the audience at this particular juncture. Do you have any questions? You can just raise your hand and then the SEM will be able to respond to you. Yes, I can see we have one question. Any other question? All right, so as we try to figure out how we can ask, how we can raise that. Maybe he can just come. He's just one person. Instead of taking the mic, let him come. Yes, please come, sir. You can clap for him and encourage him as he comes. Yes, there was another hand there. Please just come if it's okay. Start by telling us your name, whether you're a student, what you do, and then you can ask your question. Yes, come.
Good afternoon. My name is Edgar Afula. One, I'm a social protection officer by profession. I'm also a student of this university, and I'm also doing many other things. I'll direct my question to the Registrar of Companies. Let me say, Madam Joyce, of course I've seen on the several occasions, and I'm also privileged to have been, to have my certificate of registration signed under her name, and that is why I drew you that attention from. My question is, we are all aware that the registration of companies is done in the Office of the Attorney General, and in Kenya, we may see that somebody like Edgar has registered a company by the name Wafula and So Associates, and we have another Wafula there who has registered it in maybe Nyandarua. I've registered it in Kinangop. According to the law, we know that the companies in Kenya are territorial in nature. So in the case that Wafula and Company Associate has registered in Nyandarua, and I have registered in Kinangop, and perhaps we have almost similar activities being carried out by the companies, are there any regulatory procedures and practices that have been implemented by the Registrar of Companies to avoid conflict in the discharge of duties? And in case there are, what are the measures that the Registrar of Companies is trying to put in place to ensure that if I'm carrying out, for example, financial services, and he's also carrying out similar services, we do not conflict in such affairs? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edgar.
Thank you, Edgar, and happy to know that you are one of our clients. The question you've posed speaks into the issue of protection of business names or company names, which, as you all know, these entity names, you find that having built your profile, it has goodwill, such that it deserves the protection of the law at the end of the day, such that today you cannot pick Safaricom and purport to register a name, a company or an entity called Safaricom because of the brand that they've built over time. So under the Companies Act, the Business Registration of Business Names Act, the Limited Liability Partnerships Act, and the Partnerships Act, which we administer for purposes of registration of different types of entities, you find that the law protects your company name or your business entity name. And what the law does is it gives priority to the first person who registered in time. If you registered your entity last year, somebody else comes and wants to register a similar name, we do not allow that. We've had instances, particularly with manual processes, where inadvertent errors would occur, and you find a situation where a name is registered by mistake. And in such a situation, when it happens, the registrar does have power to issue a directive for the second in time to change their company name to ensure that it's not in conflict with an entity which has been registered first in time. Of course, also we have instances where people would want to steal identity. Somebody would intentionally seek to register a similar name with the intention to defraud. It could be, particularly in land matters, you find there is somebody who wants to steal somebody's land, and they come and they disguise and seek to register an entity. It could be even employees, they're working in a particular entity, and your role is, you could be an accountant, you collect checks, and what you find, cases where somebody would register an entity with the intention to pass off, you collect a check, you open an account, and you go and you cash in somebody's check. So you find that indeed there are situations where this happen in error, and there are situations where people seek to have such registration happen with the intention to defraud another entity. As an organization, especially in the advent of technology, what we're trying to do, one, is to automate automate these processes, reduce the level of human involvement. And even in the wake of AI and modern technology, there is a lot of potential in terms of being able to, to have in place modern technologies which would certainly ensure that such things does not happen. But this is work in progress, which we are continually seeking to improve our services to ensure that that does not happen.
Thank you, CS. A round of applause for CS Koech.
Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. My name is Kobil. If you forget, you will remember me with the petrol station. Thank you. You said we start with?
Your name, which you told us, and then what you do, if you're a student.
I'm told before I ask a question, I must state whether I'm a student, what I do. Thank you. I am a lawyer. I am a lecturer. I am a high school teacher. A former student of Kisii, University of Eldoret, Moi, current student of Kenyatta University. My question is, in the morning we were told that CASNEB is a legal establishment and therefore it is one of parastatals in Kenya. We see the government of Kenya busy choosing the heads of parastatals, where we were told CASNEB is established from. CASNEB is a professional body. So why then do we allow government to choose heads of parastatals who are politicians and they are not professionals in the field that the professionals offer? Is this not adulterating a profession? What precautions do we have in place to deter government from such a negative interference in a professional body? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I'd like to start with CS Kiama. Maybe if you can answer that question. Interface of governance.
Thank you. I don't work for CASNEB, so just in case you have a stone to throw. Yes, but CASNEB is not a professional body. CASNEB is a government state entity or a parastatal established under the Accountants Act. So, and it administers the different professional bodies, including the accountants, which is also established under the Accountants Act. It also administers examinations for CPS and ICFA, among other bodies. So when you look at the Accountants Act, the board, because as a parastatal, there are different, it's more of a stakeholder body with different representatives. So there, being a government a parastatal, of course, government has an interest. So, and you see, parastatals will fall under the Ministry of Finance. So to that extent, there is a reserve for good reasons, for governance reasons as well. There's a reserved number of seats that are reserved for not politicians, not the political class, but representatives of the parent ministry, for instance, in this case, which would be the Ministry of Finance. Then we also, as the institute, we nominate 2 people to sit in the board. The same thing happens to the accountants body, which also nominates 2 people. So to that extent, it is more of a stakeholder body, which the constitution is well outlined within the law. So it is not, and I think it has not happened before, where ICS is supposed to send members, and those members are sent from other quarters. So I don't know whether the person was referring to Kobil, was referring, thank you to the petrol station, it has reminded me of the name, was referring to CASNEB to that extent. But as far as I'm aware, that is the order, that's the modus operandi of CASNEB, different stakeholders.
Thank you, CS. A round of applause. So do we have any more questions from the audience? Yes, just come. Any other question? Please come.
Okay. I'm Dr. Musioka, a member of School of Business. I'm happy for this discussion of today because governance is a very important concept in management. And I think this is really lacking all over. I mean, you can agree with me. And just to harp on this, I think if this can be really embraced by everybody, a lot of things which we are witnessing in this country, which are messing up in terms of development, can be minimized. Now, I want to ask a question, which is sort of relating to the conduct of government officers. Maybe you can comment on it. Recently, I think it was this week or last week, we witnessed a CS who make a pronouncement that a certain OCS, this OCS should be transferred from a certain station, police station. I was just asking myself, I don't know whether the law, you are experts there, or anybody who is here an expert. I was wondering, was that really in the right order? And if actually we are talking about embracing the principles of governance to avoid any kind of overlap, should that be really advocated? And if this is really happening from the leaders who are there, what kind of image are they portraying to our young people? I mean, young leaders who are like you guys who are coming up. So I think members who are here, maybe you can comment there. And if such things are there, how can we really be able to come up with the ways of minimizing them to avoid problems in future, because they'll be affecting decisions. The other one is the issue of what Madam you said about the example you gave of, is it Nakumat? Nakumat, yeah. I don't know, have been involved in certain lease activities. And there is somewhere, I'm told, if you want to be protected in lease, you must register the lease. And the lease, once it's registered, it takes care of, you protect the leasee, and the person who is giving the lesson. Because sometimes you may find, and that brings in an aspect of later, a mediation window, such that if something happens, like maybe I'm a proprietor, I start a business, and maybe by bad luck I die, and maybe my children or my wife is the one who is left, and they don't have the capability. Now there will be that window of, they can mediate, so that they can exit, and then you find they will not suffer, because once you register the lease agreement, it's protective, it protects. So I don't know what, maybe you can comment about that, unless the law has changed. Asante.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
Thank you so much, Daktari. On the first question, I think you have truly pointed out an example of how abuse of power can be done. and which is the same thing that is still governed by issues to do with governance, because part of governance is the rule of law. That's a key component of it. And most people in power do not like restraint that comes with that power. So some of them, out of ignorance, or others not even out of ignorance, out of just abuse of power, would actually do beyond the scope of their power, what legally is called being ultra-vires. So of course we have such examples in the leadership that take that example, but you find that in most of those, because that's a political environment, you find that it cannot be a legally actionable thing that can actually take into effect. I'm keen to follow up as to whether, of course, people can always abuse power to push a bit of things here and there, but the law gives different parameters of even dealing with disciplinary issues, that even gives the right, under what it's within the administrative law judicial review. If you have to promote or demote or punish a person, then there are administrative factors. Or even expel a student from the university, there are certain key processes. And our laws in this country are very clear in terms of process. You could be having a good reason to do it, but because of process, that decision becomes quashed by a court of law or by an administrative body. So that's just an example of how people sometimes, we may not, when we get power, we may think that we are above the law. On the second question about lease, which I think also is coming in a different context, the purpose of registration of a lease is to protect parties when it comes to issue about enforceability, because land issues are issues at the heart of the government, because it is government which enforces issues to do with land. So that's why you find land transactions that include sale, lease, any form of land transaction. The government is highly involved, and there is very special regime that happens. So when you fail to register a lease, and lease could contain so many, there are standard clauses, but there could be also very specific clauses, for instance, on dispute resolution, which could touch on mediation, for instance. So if, for instance, you have not all agreements contain, land agreements contain mediation, but if you desired as a lessee or lessor to have mediation in that agreement and fail to register, then you cannot go to, when one party takes you to court, you're not protected because that agreement is not enforceable, because you have failed to adhere to one of the legal prerequisites which will entitle you for protection. So the protection in this instance, in my opinion, would be when I'm aggrieved by a particular party's action, I have recourse to court. And when I seek audience of the court, I'll be having a legally binding instrument. So for contracts that involve land, there is an extra element that comes with it to make it more legally binding. For instance, it must be written, which is not in other contracts. Yes.
Thank you very much. We have two other questions.
Maybe just to add on to what CS Kiema said, I think in most, it could be business relationship or any contractual relationship, you'll always find that the lack of, I don't want to call it lack of knowledge, but just an appreciation of the legal issues that potentially can arise enables you to seek the kind of legal advice which, would, in situations where possible conflict arise, you find that your interests are always catered for. And you always find that it's more costly not to acquire that legal advice than in a situation where there is a conflict. Just like any person who is running a business, it's more costly not to engage professional services than a situation where you engage professional services, because what happens is you're able to anticipate issues and you're able to have, clauses which would be able to protect and address your interests. I think on the question to do with the excesses, what you talked about in terms of the CS and the utterances, basically these are some of the excesses that we keep seeing in society. It goes against the rule of law, it goes against the oath of office that people took, and I think it takes an ethical society to call out such leadership, because it takes me to be ethical, to groan over it, to be unhappy about it, and to call them out. When you see mature democracies, or when you see countries where there is better governance, there's been a journey which has gone on over time, with increased agitation, with increased call out into the leadership, with a situation where we're calling them to account. And you find that these are some of the avenues which, of course, leads to a better, society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CS. So we'll have both questions and then they will be answered together.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor Mugambi. I am a law school graduate from the University of Nairobi. I have also finished my CS course. I am in the process of registering to join the board. I am also a student at the Kenya School of Law. My question goes to Salome and Kiema, FCS Salome and CS Kiema. Particularly when you talked about the importance of policies and foundations, especially to small businesses, and making sure that they grow into bigger companies within the most effective time possible. What are these key principles and foundations that you're talking about? And does ICS have any strategies towards maybe training or showing the way forward to family businesses and how they can grow into companies in the most shortest time possible? Thank you.
My name is Joshua. I am a lawyer by profession, and I am currently enrolled in the foundation level of CS. I've just begun. My question is linked actually to the physical exercise that we saw here, the trust fall that was done by Dr. Mutuma. Last year, I was involved in a job that frankly is the worst I have ever done. I was a presiding officer in the general election last year, in charge of a polling station. So I was a small CEO in charge of 7 polling clerks, 2 policemen, and a deputy presiding officer. So we were trained hurriedly for 4 days. Then we were deployed to different places. I won't say where I was deployed, but it was within Nairobi. So this is the only job I have ever done, and I've done several. This is the only job I've ever done where nobody trusts you. Not your boss, not the voters, not the agents, not even the people around. You were even told, carry your own food because you might be poisoned by the people who live in those vibandas around the polling stations if they discover that you work for the IEBC. So doing a job under high pressure, under a very short period of time, under very short training, and then you're supposed to deliver a result. And then, first of all, when you deliver the result, you haven't slept for almost 72 hours. And then the people who are supposed to be your board governors, the IBC commissioners, publicly split, and half of them disown the work that you did and tell you that what you did was basically nonsense. And so you have basically trust deficit within the organization. People do not trust each other. The people, some of us were being said that so-and-so was hired because of being from a certain tribe, being from a certain community, and so on and so forth. And outside the institution, there's also a trust deficit as in terms of the work that you did. And this happens, I think, in a lot of organizations, especially in the public sphere. We've seen even with KEMSA, trust deficit within the organization, trust deficit without the organization. So now that I'm in the field of corporate governance, and maybe this is a question that both the panel and maybe I think FCS Wambua, you worked in the county government of Makueni where the governor was impeached at some point, I think, for trying to enforce, governance and stuff like that. How do you overcome a situation where you walk into and there is no trust? There's already a trust deficit getting in. As you do the job, there is a trust deficit. After you do the job, there is still a trust deficit. How do you overcome that? Thank you.
Maybe before I give CS Kiema and FCS Salome, there was the question which was posed by Victor, which I would want to answer from the perspective of a regulator. We normally see businesses which are registered, and we also see businesses which have been in existence for long, and they run into situations. You'll always find that the basic governing document for a company would be the Articles of Association. And I earlier mentioned the need to ensure that you have constituting documents which are able to address various issues. You always find that in most of these entities, the failure began right from the constitutive documents that they have in place. I've seen entities which have clauses which when you look at them, you find they are unconscionable. You find a company having a clause where one of the directors is a governing a governing director with power to hire and fire everybody. When you think about the principles of company law, whereby the board operates, it's not a person, you find that it goes against the principles of company law, of good governance, of corporate governance, and name it all. So basically, when you talk about these company businesses, it really starts at the point of formation. And normally, when you're still small, there are no problems. When you begin a side hustle with your friend, when you're still talking about small monies, it's so manageable. But you find that as you grow, you didn't anticipate that your business would grow into a big entity. It becomes critical that you have very good constitutive documents which speaks to different scenarios. And I always say that as you put in place these constitutive documents, look at it as, as a sword which cuts both ends. And the more you leave room for discretion, you're leaving room for a lot of problems. When you don't speak into something, then the likelihood of running into a situation is very high. But the moment you anticipate issues and you have the same addressed in your constitutive documents, then you find that those kind of documentation would govern the practice, would govern decision-making, would govern operations. And sometimes you can find that ni kama inafungia watu, but it is for the good of the organization. And even as the owner, you should be able to live within, whatever governance structures which exist. For instance, issues to do with drawings. The business is mine. I would want to go on holiday, and I just want to pull money left, right, center. But the moment you have proper principles in terms of how things are done within the organization, then you even yourself operating within them. And in essence, you're protecting the business even from yourself and from other stakeholders. There was the question to do with the perils within society, what Joshua, you spoke. How I would look at it is, it's the society that we live in, yeah? And these are the things which we face on a day-to-day basis. As a person, for me, I always tell myself that I should, at any given point, ask myself what's the right thing to do. So that there is the aspect of my ethical values, I should be able to live within them. There are situations, even when you think about whistleblowing, it comes as an expensive thing because you can whistleblow because you're not happy with certain things which are happening, and it can be very costly. In a situation where you find that it's going against you as a person, just like when there is disease in your body, let's say there is cancer, as in you find that the body, it's fighting against itself. In such a situation, for me, I would say that it reaches a point where you can exit. I don't need to be in a place where I'm working against the very, very ethical principles that I believe in. If I'm not able to discharge my duty in the manner that I think is the right way to do it, then I should not be able to bore into any external pressures. That's how I would look at it.
Thank you, CS. I think CS has been very elaborate on those two questions. Just to pick from where she left, of course, we have a lot of trust deficit as a society. And sometimes it is very easy to, when we think about the ills that go around this country, most times we forget that those ills really start from a personal, individual capacity. I think most of us are not that. Ethics and integrity is a very personal thing that starts at the very lowest level. And impunity does not require you to occupy an office for you to be ethically right. If today I operate with impunity, impunity is basically that nobody can tell you anything. So if in my discharge of my duties, I'm a lecturer, if nobody can tell me anything when it comes to how I administer because I know somehow the future somehow of my students is in my hands, if nobody can tell me anything, if nobody can tell you anything considering in matters of where you stay, in how you operate, even in how you deal with your parents and your neighbors, then that's I'm only failing to been given a big position in this country, and nothing will change. There will not be a magic pill that I'll be given, and then all of a sudden, I can listen to everybody, and I can actually be a good practitioner of governance, because we say that governance is overarching. It's basically everywhere. And the first question about some of the principles or key elements for business, the good thing is that in this world, the world is a bit old. So there's people have studied, documented processes and procedures that work. So when you come to the governance space, we start from a point of what has been there. You find that we will not be reinventing the wheel. For instance, they are in Kenya, for instance, we have about 8 parameters of what constitutes good governance of running an institution, regardless of the size and regardless of in the areas which it operates. And the second question that was tied to that is that how is ICS contributing? What is the role of ICS? In fact, that is what we do as ICS, because we champion for good governance, particularly using the parameters that we've been given. Some of these parameters include disclosure, independence, conflict of interest, separation of powers, ethics. So when you look at, I would charge you to look at Mwongozo, for instance. There are those parameters that have been given that apply across the board. And I just mentioned Mwongozo, and I think Chairman mentioned that is actually a product of ICS. It's one of the products that we have. Mwongozo is a code for parastatals that gives what would constitute good governance for parastatals. But we've not just been into the parastatal space, we've also been to public listed companies. And another key code is the CMA code, which again, ICS is one of the main stakeholders in formulating. In fact, the CEO would tell you that when Mwongozo was being drafted, he's the person that typed Mwongozo. If you can look for Mwongozo, it's on the internet. The words that you see there is the CEO. Your CEO is the one who typed the words of Mwongozo. So we are both in those public sectors. But when it comes to family, sometimes it becomes very difficult to regulate family, and because those two aspects are, government is interested in protecting members of public and even protecting public investment through parastatals. So those two codes will govern those two areas. But we have been gone over and above that to give good principles that operate to private companies. We have a code as ICS, which we have produced, that is actually accessible. And we have not just a code, we have standards The chairman mentioned that there are so many standards that govern each practice. There's a standard that governs how meetings are run. Very specific details. We are the thought leaders when it comes to such areas. And we have actually started conversations with what is going around in our churches, for instance. We recently had a meeting with church leaders to talk about governance in churches. And most importantly, we also run trainings. We do a lot of trainings. And one of the trainings in our calendar, but our trainings are actually open to everyone, not just members. One of our trainings is styled family-owned businesses. And we have people who take you through the principles that you cannot be basically everything in a business, and how to run what CS Gloria referred to sustainable businesses, and how to be able to separate and deal with the founder's syndrome. Yes, so maybe FCS.
I'll just add something small. I think CS Kiema and CS Joyce have done a brilliant job in handling the two questions. The last question, I think, from the gentleman, who had the worst job that anybody could wish to have, where there's trust deficiency. I just want to tie up both questions, actually, by just, as professionals, looking at whatever you're charged to doing, whether in a small business, whether as a professional, there's something I like to allude to. When we have different interests, we operate in different circles. And I tend to feel that even in the professional space, we have become very adept. We are very good at looking at a picture that we don't have any control. And then we ignore the things that we are in control of. So there are three circles. There's the circle of interest, like the politics in Kenya. It's a circle of interest. When you come to the next level, circle of influence, you're a law student, you're a lawyer, you are whatever you are in this space right now, and there's an industry around it, and you operate in that industry, you could influence it to some extent. Like if you're a presiding officer at a polling station, the elections in Kenya is a circle of influence. You have a role to play in it. Even me as a voter, I have a role to play. But then there's that bit of a circle of control. In Kenya and in many parts of the world, we spend a lot of time thinking about the circle of influence, the circle of interest and the circle of influence, and totally forget our circle of control. And if I'm to use, the Governor Makueni was referred to, so I will use him as an example. If you study from a public side, if you study the Governor of Makueni, the former Governor of Makueni, and how he operated, he faced all the terrible challenges that a politician can face in running the county from all levels. And he was operating in a very environment that we all know how the county governors, the environment is of operating, the political environment in our country. But what made him successful? I always, from a third party who has absolutely no interest in Makueni, for me, what made Governor Kibwana successful was focusing on his circle of control. And his circle of control was Makueni County. Not the politics in Kenya, not the politics in whatever, it was Makueni County. And indeed, as CS Joyce said, at some point he offered to quit. They chased him and he offered to quit also at some point. But he kept his focus purely on his circle of control, and that's what made him steer the county into something that we admire. We don't know, maybe if we go there, they may tell us different stories. But for the sake of the country, it was like a showcase county for many, many counties. A lot of things that could not happen in others happened. So as professionals, how do we focus on our circle of control? Because that's really the only thing that you can influence. And I'm glad I'm sitting on the table with CS Joyce here. CS Joyce has focused on BRS. I don't know at what point she took it. The company registry was in shambles. There were people masquerading as CS, no, not even masquerading. There was not even any need to pretend. But it was shambles for those of you who had anything to do with the company registry. Now, by concentrating on her circle of control, BRS is turning around. And you know, I really love the way, and I'm not saying this because she's here, I'm saying this because I'm a practitioner. She did not go out to politically deal with those people who are masquerading. She just slowly put systems in place without, you know, too much noise, and slowly, you know, the company registry is an organization now that you can talk about, brought on professionals, brought on people to work on that, on what or whatever. It was not about, let me deal with the quacks. Running after the quacks, you know, would not have got us, I think, where we are. You just put in systems, you're in control of the BRS, and it moves. So that is what we are called to do. And the presiding officer, I'm very happy you didn't quit. There was an election at the end. Now, in terms, I think it was Joshua. Is your name Joshua? Where is it? Yeah, Joshua. Yeah, you didn't quit. And that made you something that, it gave you an opportunity to really test yourself in transparency, accountability, fairness. How do I operate in this environment that does not trust me, but I still have to deliver? And that's really what got you. Now, do you take that skill to any profession, you will actually make it. So thank you for that. But I was just adding, tie it in together with what is your circle of control.
Thank you very much, FCS. Now, I will not allow CS Gloria to respond to that because we have one more question, but I have been informed that they're setting up lunch, so I'm not eating into your lunchtime. So with your kind permission, I'd like him to ask the question and then we can just round up, and then I'm sure lunch will be served at that time. So do I have your permission? Do I have your permission, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Okech. I'm a lecturer, so I don't ask questions. I'm the one who is normally asked questions. I just have a request, then a comment, then an observation. A request is CS Karanja. This is a very good forum, it's a very good arrangement, and I hope it will continue. Going forward, include lead training institution in the panel, kindly, because there were some questions which were asked here, and looking at the papers, they're normally tested. So you need also trainers to be in the panel. Their input could equally be important. Number two, this is a comment. If you look at other CASNEP professional qualifications, like the CPA and the CIFA, at the exit papers, they have the digital literacy papers. You know, we have the data, business data analytics, and also we have the financial modeling for CIFA. I request that in the CS, we have a digital literacy paper at the exit. This research paper can be dealt with either at the research consultancy advisory, or you can kill the principles and practice and include it there. Let us go digital the way things are going. The observation. This is a very good forum indeed. And many years ago, I think I was in this school. And some of our lecturers, professors were arrested here, some were killed. Let's try to restrain, to totally avoid, if possible, political comments, in my view, because different affiliations in the political circle, there could be better forums to address political issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So there was one last question from the online people. So we have a question from Beatrice Buire, I think, and this is directed to CS Joyce. It's a follow-up question from one that had been asked already. And she says, what happens in cases of double registration and yet the first to register is not available, yet the second registration is active and has assets in the company? So I'll repeat. What happens in cases of double registration and yet the first to register is not available, yet the second registration is active and has assets in the company?
The issue to do with the first in time not being available is really something which I would say is quite debatable, because the question would be not available according to, how did you do this assessment and you came to a conclusion that indeed they are not active or they are not available. Anyhow, we've had situations where indeed it's an inadvertent registration, double registration, and there is a possibility that the first in time, it might still not be active. In such cases, you find that the registrar has power to inquire whether they are still operating, and in situations where we do not find that response, then we would explore the mechanism of having that first in time also struck off the register.
Thank you. I hope Beatrice Bure has received the response. So just a parting shot, even as we break, you can tell us what advice you would offer to students who are eager to embark on the CS journey towards a successful career and armed with the knowledge and experience gained through our conversations today. Yes.
Okay. I think that the CS profession is really the cherry on the cake. I think we all need to have it, because if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need the skills for your business. If you get employed, you'll rise to the top. When you get to the top, you'll need those skills. If you get to sit on a board, which I think is ultimately the highest place in a career, because when you get so successful, everyone wants you on their board. So when you get to that level, you'll need that qualification. So I think it's something worth pursuing. It's now that you have the time and resources in terms of, I'm sure you get free internet, you have access to the library, and people to revise and learn with. So it's just much easier to study when you're in a school environment as opposed to waiting until later when you get to the job market. So I think it's something you should pursue, and you'll thank your younger self when you're older. Thank you.
My advice would be similar to what CS Gloria said. I would encourage anybody who is in a who has the opportunity to be able to sign up for this profession, Yesterday, I was attending a class, and our lecturer was telling us about a course he did at Strathmore, and he said he found it quite costly, and he wondered whether it would give him value for his money. And as he talked to us, he told us that over and over he's had to acquire additional certifications, and he's come to see the value that is gotten over those skills that is acquired over time. I would say it might not be that you'd actively practice company secretarial, be in active practice, but the knowledge and the skills that you would acquire, you find that it sharpens you even for the marketplace. So I would encourage everybody who is in a situation where they can sign up for the same, that you look back one day and feel it was a worthwhile endeavor.
For me, I would say for students, be resilient, and a question would be, how thirsty are you to achieve that goal that you want to achieve? And I would summarize with my short story throughout this profession. I started my CS when I was in first year, and we had just been given a holiday. So a friend of mine who was in fourth year asked me, what are you going to do at home? I told him, I don't know, I'm going just to chill. So he tells me, notes, go and read for these CASNEB exams. And I started reading, and by the time I was in third year, I finished. And I still wanted to know, what can I do more? So I looked at few things. At that time, we were not fortunate enough to have these events. If they were there, maybe I was also busy in other things. Then I started gaining a desire to get to know what is this profession, what does it entail? And sometimes when you have a desire and a thirst, sometimes things would conspire. I started coming to the institute asking people, where do I start? What do I do? Then met the CEO. Then he was not the CEO then. Just met him and befriended him and told him that I want to know how to behave around this thing. What I see, some of the things seems to be you'll find that CSs are very senior people, extremely senior people, occupying very high-ranking positions in society. So me picturing myself in that, I could see a bit of some disconnect, but I was able to walk with people who would remove some of the ignorant about some of the things that I thought it were. And joined, I told them that if you do not hold me, I'm just going to quit. And somehow things just fell into place. I started joining, volunteering. At the first I volunteered to go, I was taken as part of the cohort by the institute to go to the company's registry when the registry was streamlining things, and that's why I met CS Joyce. She was my boss. We didn't know that at one point we'll come and sit here to share a platform. And then I continued active and thirst and desire to know, and I've grown in the ranks. I'm now 5 years old in the profession, and I'm the youngest member ever elected to the council of ICS. Unipigie makofi tafadhali. Thank you. And all that is because of the desire and the thirst to want to learn. It is very good what you are doing in class, but also desire to network. One thing that we realize as I finish is that the CS profession is a small, prestigious clique of professionals. So if you continue hanging around, most likely you're going to attend an interview where you have met with somebody in this profession. And people give jobs to people who they can trust, who they have. It's not just enough to have that good grade, first class, second class, uppers locked in somewhere. Come out here, network, talk with somebody, and be sure that you're going to meet them. And this applies to all aspects of life, not just to the CS. Want to go beyond an extra mile, beyond having the knowledge in the book, beyond having a good grade. want to get interpersonal skills that would help you, because in most instances, when you go to an interview, it will be very difficult for you to really, it's not a good forum enough to show who really you are. But interpersonal and expressive skills can be a very good investment right now as you are going through school. So the profession is for us for taking, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you in the profession, even as we grow in the profession. Thank you so much.
Now, from me, I will build on what CS Kiema has said. My parting shot is, please maintain a healthy hunger and thirst for knowledge. And you will definitely rise to the top in whatever you're doing. I have this philosophy that our job here on earth is one thing and one thing only: to grow, to expand, and to enjoy that expansion. So to grow or expand and to enjoy that expansion. Because it's for nothing if you expand and you're not enjoying that expansion. So now you could be in law school, you could be in business school, or whichever school you are in, you're growing. And when that growth is over, when you get that first class or upper second class, there's still more growth to be done. And the CS course comes in as a fantastic growth area. And even when you qualify for it, there'll still be growth to be done inside. So I will end with a quote that was initially said by Councillor Limende of success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that makes all the difference. Of course, I'm paraphrasing it, but that's my parting shot to you. Keep growing and keep learning from the failures and keep enjoying the successes. Thank you.
A round of applause for our panelists. We can do better, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time and the very insightful conversations that we have had here today. And with that, that was our time. Thank you very much.
Joy, if you allow me,
yes.
What I would want to add on is opportunities will never go looking for you. It's you to go looking for those opportunities. You'll find somebody, even starting from class, how you conduct yourself, how meticulous you are with your, how you do your studies. CS Kiema is an example of serious resilience. Seeing somebody who goes pursuing those opportunities. Aside that, they've talked about the need to have that thirst for knowledge. The moment you pursue it, you certainly are going to get it. But if you sit back and wait, especially in a country which is extremely competitive, you'll always feel like there is nothing for me to do. But if you decide and make a decision that there is something that I can do, then certainly you're going to cut an inch for yourself.
Thank you very much, yes. Asanteni sana. I'd like to hand over the program to Melvin, who will guide us on lunch. Yes, we can,
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you to our panelists. Guys, can we just give another round of applause for our panelists and Joy? I hope I'm coming... I hope you're not, I know you're tired, but I hope this is going to be fun. We have our lunch ready. I want to request our panelists and our other guests to go have their lunch at Arziki. The rest of us will socialize up anje. Our lunch is ready, packed at the table, the blue table outside there. And before we pray for the food, let me just guide on what we are going to do after lunch. We have FSC Karanja giving some remarks after this. Karanja is the chief executive for ICS. And after that, we'll launch our young governance professionals, and then we'll get a final word from our organizers. We want to make the afternoon session quite light and fun. So after that, then we'll have a cocktail, but not really cocktail, like tea, but you can take it as cocktail because it's cold. As we, of course, socialize and network with our guests. I would like to request our guests to come up for a photo session together with UoN LSPA, and if there's any other organization, like you came as an organization, but anyone else is welcome for the photo session. Let's take 20 minutes for lunch, and then we converge back here. Thank you. Can I get a volunteer to pray for food? Sure, come.
Let's pray.